Okay, we had a major fuck up and the thing broke. Hopefully this time it'll work. Let me check if it's like playing.
That'd be a good idea.
Yeah, and it's not a stop motion of video either. We're getting somewhere. Um, Fucking hell. So, starting again with the Palestinian Liberation Movement that's arising right now. We're in a key situation right now where this is a turning point for Palestinian liberation struggle. Anyone who's been watching the situation has seen the developments over the last few years of intensification of struggle because of the intensification of Zionist fascism, especially during the Bibi period. Yeah, Benji boy. And what's it? We've seen within the Israeli population as well, amongst those supposedly innocent civilians, a rise in fascist intent and a want for genocide of Palestinian people. And this has increased over time as the fascist Israeli system, the occupational system, has ramped up its gears in regards to its response to increased uprising of Palestinian resistance, both peaceful and aggressive. Everyone will focus on Hamas this, Hamas that. It's not the only thing that's been happening in the last fucking what's it, 80 years.
It's Hamas is basically just serving as like a bogeyman, like the IRA were in the 1990s and 80s in the UK.
Yeah,
It's like it's just it's a kind of collective brainwashing. It's like, oh, they're bad, they're terrorists, bad, terrorist, bad, terrorist, terrorist,
the
terrorist,
fucking
terrorist, evil, devil, Satan, Beelzebub, terrorist, and it's like a kind of media brainwashing. Because I used to say about Irish republicanism, they go, but the terrorists, and I
you
used to go, what do you mean?
you get like the Scots Irish settlers in Northern Ireland, and then they're like quite English fucking like Irish accent that's got a bit of Scottish in it. They'll be like, those fucking terrorists, they're fucking trying to take away our country and our religion.
Murdering our people now. This is our white country, and we're being murdered in our beds by those terrorist things. It's like, oh shit.
They've got fucking they're working with the Catholics. They always made it about religion, and they're doing this again now. This war has nothing to do with religion. Neither did the Irish War. If everyone's trying to compare this to Ukraine, this is nothing like Ukraine. If you want to see a comparison to what the fucking Palestinians are going through, look up the Troubles, because it's exactly the same situation but worse.
More extreme, much more extreme. Yeah.
Much more extreme, but it's the same. Yeah. It's the same dollar. Or looking like to the earlier Irish struggles as well. Like, there's a reason why we've had such strong solidarity. Is that like the Irish movement has always had a strong sense of solidarity with the colonized, especially the left. Yes. Ireland is a country where like there are black people who are from Africa originally, but they like their families have lived in Ireland for generations, and they're Irish. They call themselves Irish. Everyone calls them Irish. No one goes, "Hey, wait, no, you're something else." So there are like black Irish people as well as like white Irish people, but we don't talk about those Americans. But the term whiteness is kind of weird when you get into Ireland because, like, technically speaking, we're not white. It's complicated. Like we benefit from whiteness per se, but we're like it's really complicated. It's a whole nother video. Black Red Guard actually did a good stream on this, and I suggest people watch it.
I saw that recently. He did. It was very good, actually.
And his streams on the Palestinian situation are absolute must-watches.
I haven't seen much of those yet, but yeah.
I've only seen a couple, and they've been fucking fire. But yeah, the situation heavily relates to these kind of struggles where it is a colonized people fighting against a settler colonizer. It's not like an invasion from somewhere else. Israel is in Palestine. It is part of like Palestinian territories that they have taken. Like, stolen land, don't make it your land. That's like the motto of fucking land back. And it supplies here. Israel is not a separate fucking nation from Palestine. They're not even a nation. They're a collection of loads of different Jewish peoples. And for whatever argument the Jewish peoples want to make about making a nation, that's quite a complicated situation for themselves to deal with. I would argue that there's many different, like there's multiple different nationality or ethnicities that make up Judaic peoples. So it's a much more complicated question that is not as simple as like every Jew from everywhere just go to Israel and like colonize there and settle there. That seems quite problematic, especially when we look at Europe's willingness to ship Jews anywhere they can get rid of them, including like death camps.
That's the thing. A lot of people say anti-Semitism and stuff like that, and I mean, if anything, supporting Israel is very anti-Semitic because it gets rid of it. It basically coerces Jews to go and live over there, because I think the Nazis were big on the whole idea of Zion and Zionism, and the idea of like getting rid of the Jews over there and send them over to Palestine. That was
the Zionists had a deal with the Nazis about that. Well, at least some of them. There were some Zionists that were part of the resistance, but the actual like Zionists as like a group, they got involved with the Nazis and the Italian fascists, and they had like a deal where they would get to make Zion, but apparently Hitler was planning to like undercut them and send them to Madagascar instead and make an open air prison.
Yeah, I think that I've heard that before.
It's one of those like early Zionists, right? That Herzl guy or whatever. Like, pretty sure he's the one who said like the anti-Semitic governments are like our greatest friend or something along those lines. It's like,
it's
very much along those lines.
It's one of the
he's very fond of the British.
It's one of the real twisted ironies, because the like Jews who oppose Israel are often slandered as capos. As in the Jewish collaborators with the Nazis in the concentration camps. They tried to get in favor by and all this, and they're shouting "capo, capo, traitor, self-loathing Jew" and all this, and it's like you either are very disingenuous and dishonest, or you're just fucking stupid and ignorant. Because the capos, it's fairly well known, the capos were the ones who actually Zionists were actually on board with that, collaborate with the Nazis, get favor, and then we might be able to get our little imperial pocket in Palestine.
Yeah, we get this in the trans community. There's a lot of trans people that just like co-opt to like working with not just like your average run-of-the-mill fascists, but like straight up Nazis as a quote unquote tactic to protect themselves. They're always these like petty bourgeois motherfuckers. Yeah. But like what you see is like quite interesting, because like the capitals, they got like preferential treatment inside the death camps. They got like special little treasuries. Yeah. They got like treasures. Sorry, like they got to have a better room, actual heating, proper blankets. They got rec time. They got a swimming pool. So like everyone will think the Nazis are like just like making shit up when they mention the swimming pool. No, the swimming pool existed. It was just for the Jews that betrayed all the others. Like that. It wasn't like, oh, the death camps are wonderful. It was like, no, this is for officers amongst prisoners, basically.
Yeah.
And this is something we've seen in populations regarding slavery all the way back to when the British invented, I think it was the British at the time. I don't know, the British or the English. I think it was in the 1700s, so it was probably the British. They invented whiteness through the use of trying to separate the house slave, as it used to be called, from the chattel slave by calling them indentured servants and giving them special treatments and the ability to actually work their slavery away.
Yeah. I mean, during the Angorta Mór, the Irish Holocaust, they forced Irish peasants into indentured servitude, and it was like the whole line between indentured servitude and outright slavery was kind of often deliberately blurred.
Yeah,
and you got like right wing Irish Americans claiming to be slaves. It's like, well, what do you mean by a slave? We're not chattel slaves, but
yeah, we were a different kind of slave. Like black people, like who were chattel slaves, would criticize black people who were house slaves. Like you'll hear it from anyone, even to this day. In that Irish video, a Black Red Guard gets into it. Like the difference between the two groups is drastic. Like the house slave got so much benefits. If they were ill, or if they just wanted to pretend to be ill, their master would go give them a bottle of whiskey. Child slave says they're ill, It might be time to put them down, is the master's response. You can't work.
Yeah.
What are you to the master if you're a chattel slave? You know, you're dust. You're a liability in their opinion because you could make everyone else ill and you could cause a problem for the chain of production.
Basically, livestock.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they're just, I mean, they were regarded as not human, so yeah.
I mean, like, what's it? The cowboys or cattlemen, as they also used to be called. One of their main jobs was moving slaves. That's like one of the main things that kind of give them their name. It's not just the fact that they moved cows; it's also that they moved slaves. Slaves were literally, in many instances, referred to as cattle, like just outright. That's a fucking telling situation if I ever fucking saw one.
Yeah.
I mean, the liberal media is not even recognizing the fact that the Palestinians are treated like cattle very similarly. I mean, they got to go through all these fucking checkpoints and shit. Always have to be put in check. Always fucking getting thrown out of their fucking homes and shit. Always getting fucking bombed and cold through the fucking bombing that they have to go through.
If there's two states, where's the Palestinian border force? Where's their protection to stop like Israelis getting into their country?
Yeah.
Oh, but terrorism. Oh, but what about anti-Semitism, terrorism? These are just the little guilt trip tools they use. Terrorism and anti-Semitism. If you're a Nazi if you oppose us and you support terrorism. And
maybe I'm just not aware of it, but which other country has the ability to just like shut off your fucking water supply and electricity?
The only other one I could think of, or two, would be there's like an apartheid country in Northwest Africa. I can't remember which one it is. They might. I don't even think they have the ability to shut people's water off. But like, if it's gonna be another country, it's another apartheid country. Like, that's the only comparable example I can think of.
There was one in the 80s. There was one in the 80s, which was Israel's biggest ally. That was South Africa during the actual apartheid.
Yeah.
Do you know what's funny? Israel stood against South Africa when they were getting like bombarded by the rest of the international community for being apartheid. And the guy who originally come up with like the apartheid political structure was like crying about how Israel, their like closest apartheid brethren, would betray them, and then like turned around and said, "I hope the Palestinian resistance crushes Israel." He was so pissed.
That's what's his name, Verwoerd, I think his name was. That's the architecture of apartheid.
Yeah.
He superciliously referred to apartheid as good neighborliness. To which I believe Nehru said, "I'm glad he's not my neighbor." That's all I can say. I thought, yeah, fair enough.
That's very American of him, though. Because that's the way the Americans perceived their white supremacy. That it was like, especially in the 1900s, where it was this like picket fence, like white purity shit, where everywhere had to be the white, pure, suburban neighborhood, semi-detached to detached housing, fancy stuff for all the white people.
Awful fucking. It's just so twee. It's so horrible. It's like, I mean, it's been used in horror movies, that whole Midwest conservative white America kind of thing. Hi honey, I'm home. It's become it's kind of strange how it alienates a lot of white Americans. People, shall I say, Turtle Islanders, because it became used in horror movies to convey some kind of horrible Kafkaesque dystopian sanitized nightmare of just horrible alienation. Yeah, because it is.
I love how so many I love how in America like so many white so-called leftists are like saying, so this is what they mean by decolonization. It's like, what the fuck did you think it meant?
What do you think is going to happen with no fighting? What, the oppressor's just going to give back the land?
Liberals,
we're going to sit around and sing Kumbaya? Like, what the fuck are we doing?
I mean, I used to hear this shit from like radlibs in England, because they used to say, I'd say like the only option to the Irish liberation, to draw parallels with Palestine, was they say, oh, but what about it worked in India, peaceful protest worked in India. I said, no, that's according to Richard Attenborough's adaptation. That's Richard Attenborough's biopic of Mahatma Gandhi, it was peaceful protest was the way that did it. It actually isn't the truth. That's a very English colonizer, a British colonizer
Fucking
version.
Gaddafi, not Gaddafi, sorry, Gandhi. Gandhi actually turned around and was like, yo, if the British let us have the caste system back, we will, like, the British never even really got rid of the caste system. That's the funny thing.
No.
Like, they technically maintained it, they just didn't, like, maintain its, like, legal positions. And, like, that's all Gaddafi, that's, fuck's sake, that's all Gandhi wanted, was maintenance, like a return of the legal positions of what's it, caste. He was a piece of shit. Like, he was happy to be a part of the British. He didn't give a fuck about being a colony.
Yeah.
He just wanted preferential treatment.
Why else would he? I mean, why else would he have been such a darling to British history? You know,
Oh
British,
yeah, they love him.
Pro-British Empire types have loved him. I mean, old British movies portrayed him as the hero, and they'd have these communist rebels in India as portrayed as nasty, monstrous, evil. You know, they were the ghoulish, and the Gandhi was this. He was deified. I mean, the man was fucking deified, and I mean, why? The fucker was anything but an angel. He was, well, yeah. I mean, you could go on about his sexual deviance and all that sort of stuff as well, but that's more about cult of personality. His whole political stances were fucking terrible. I mean,
yeah. I mean, speaking about sexual deviancy, I don't know if anyone else has picked it up, but the liberal media has really been picking up on that racialized bullshit. I know BRG's been covering it pretty well. But they're trying to like do the whole like, oh, these fucking Arab brown men are out here raping all the Jewish women.
all that, yeah.
It's like super racist bullshit.
A friend of ours showed, he tagged me on another social media platform and a lot of other people about showing an Israeli settler woman giving an account of what happened when I think they were Hamas. I'm not even sure. I think they were, but I can't be clear. I can't be sure exactly. They came into the house, spoke to her in English, and said, "We are Muslims. We're not here to hurt you." And they were actually quite civilized. And one of them said, "Oh, can I have a banana, please?" And she went, "Oh yeah, please help yourself." And then they made sure the kids weren't terrified, and then they left. I don't know exactly what it was they were doing there, but the whole account that she was saying was there was no violence, there was no aggression or intimidation. It was actually, if anything, they were quite like, we're not here to cause you any harm. They did a few things in the home and then they left. And I thought,
yeah,
what about so no beheading babies? No gang raping women and terrorizing people and forcing them from their homes. I thought, why would they say this? The same old thing is it's a bit like the old thing you see these like British, US, French, German nationalists saying we can't let these darkies into the country because they'll come and kill us and rape us and pillage us. Why would you say that? Well, because that's what we did to them, and it's the same again. That's what we
literally did. That same type of shit.
Take your own crimes and then project them onto the other side because, well, if we let them into here, well, they'll do to us what you did to them, you bastard. Fuck you. You know, I mean, every time.
Yeah, if there's all these like claims about this shit, I wish there was more video proof because like I've been seeing all types of videos, very disturbing fucking videos, gore videos, dead bodies, all this different shit. It's been horrible. Yeah. Horrible watching, but I haven't seen anything like that. I haven't seen all this like 40 beheaded babies or whatever the fuck.
Well, yeah, I mean,
what I have seen a lot of is I've seen a lot of dead Palestinian children that are being indiscriminately targeted by the IDF.
Well, didn't they show pictures of they were allegedly victims of Hamas and this terrible Palestinian attack on Israel? And the actual pictures they were using were dead Palestinians that had been murdered by the IDF, but they tried to twist it around and say it was Israeli victims of Palestinians.
Yeah, there's other videos too of like unarmed Palestinians being shot in the back by IDF soldiers, and then the IDF soldiers placed weapons right by their bodies to make it look like they were fighters.
That's nothing new. The British, the Brits did that in Ireland as well. I mean, I think pretty much any imperial conqueror will do that.
Yeah, I've seen fucking videos of the IDF just like running over dead Palestinian bodies. I've seen videos of them taking a piss on their bodies and shit. Like,
and there's always like sexual assault, genital mutilation, fucking
Yeah.
all sorts of crazy shit that goes on. Um,
Where else would they get the idea to accuse the other side of it? Because
yeah, you know, an accusation from a conservative is usually an admittance to
course.
something.
I mean, it became a kind
Yeah.
of it became a comedy cliche. It's like all these rabid homophobes were in the closet. All these rabid transphobes weren't so much closetly trans, but they had a kind of weird, kinky fantasy of getting felched by a trans woman or something. You know what I mean?
Oh, you know about chasers? Like fucking, they're like
Yeah, like
chasers
Alex
where they
Jones.
like they fetishize getting in a sexual interaction with us, but they still think we're like scum of the earth that should be wiped off the face of the earth.
I'm laughing ironic. It's kind of funny, but it's not at the same
I mean,
time. You know?
it's a similar thing that happens with colonized peoples. They fucking they go on about like how like they'll accuse black women of being like men when black women are fucking black women. You know, they're as femme as any of them want to be. You know, like it's a stupid assumption to make of anyone, and like it's actually based on this like colonial position that's basically trying to like they demasculate black men and they defeminize black women because it's an identity crushing thing. It actually has nothing to do with anything they've clocked that makes a black woman more masculine than a white woman. It's just all bullshit. But like they'll do that shit, but then they'll also fetishize black women as like, oh, they're like succubi. They'll fuck you. They'll get in your head and they'll fuck you. You know, they're so promiscuously sexual and like hot basically. Like they're you know, they'll fetishize them as sexy and then like, oh, but they're also like evil men. And so it just creates this like fucking paradox. They do the same with us trans women. Like even though they'll accuse us of being like, oh, like men or whatever the fuck, they still use misogyny to oppress us. But they use misogyny that's a little closer to underclass women, like black women, sex workers, regardless of ethnicity, homeless women, people in severe poverty. They'll treat us with that brush because we're seen as like we're you know, while we're like, you know, those of us that are white, while we are white, we're seen as like the underclass in regards to whiteness, like white trash. And so we're not protected. We're not a part of the protected class of women. And so you'll see a lot of like parallels between the way that we're treated and the way that like colonized women are treated. And you'll see the same with Arab women. Arab women are perceived to be like, oh, these like they're all like really conservative and over embroidered in like covering themselves up and being reclusive from the lusts of men. But then also they'll hypersexualize them, and when they hypersexualize them, they'll go on about how like, oh, you know, they need to be liberated from these dress clothes and all that, but in like a rapey way. And like it all just like stinks of such similar grounds. They're different between the groups. They're not all the same in how they envision these ideas, but while the content can be different, the actual form it takes is the same.
I remember the same kind of attitude towards like Irish women back in the 70s. 70s comedies, they were very much like that. It was. I used to see the same thing later on with like black women, Arabic women, and it's like Jesus. There's so many eerie similarities when you're, you know, and everything that's bad and shit and badly portrayed. It's the
I don't know
same.
if it's the same in Europe, but in the US, white men also very hypersexualize Asian women, and it's really creepy.
Yeah, and it tends to be, you get similar things in the UK, but it's not quite as extreme, I don't think. I mean, it's like you get like, I mean, in the UK you've got like secondary school peer groups, but they're not as clearly defined as they are in the US. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like the same sort of thing across the board. It's like you got the racism isn't quite so clearly defined, but it's still there. It's just not so, they're not so uptight about racial. You could get away with saying racial slurs if you're not calling somebody by them, if you know what I mean. I've often said them before, and it's got me into trouble. And I used to have to. I don't say them so much now, but you could get away with saying N-words if in front of black people, but you wouldn't, as long as you're not calling them that, because I think Britain is, it's a racist piss hole.
Yeah, and by British cultural standards, it's like normalized to.
or it's just a case of people they're not so it's not quite so segregated, so they tend not to be so.
It's more so as well that there's just like a British culture around like privilege around the things we've called people. Like we just think we kind of like in like people in the UK just think that they have this right to like basically say anything because like, well, I'm either saying it in a non-contextualized manner or like I'm saying it like this, and it's bollocks. Like you can't really do that. Like if anyone who isn't like a fucking LGBTQ plus ends up dropping the word faggot, it come down on you like a ton of bricks. But I can fucking say it right here, right now on stream, and no one can stop me.
Trotter and retard. So
Yeah, same. I can say the retard, but I can say any of them. I should be a little more preface about it because some people in our community might get a bit nosed by that. But I have an ability to say these things while others don't. But the British cultural standard is basically like very colonially minded, so they just see it as like, well, we come up with a lot of these terms, so we can use it. The British were the ones that like took the Spanish word for black and then emphasized the E and the O and put an E on the end of it, and made the most racist version of the N word. It's not the hard R that is the most racist version of the N word. That's like some shitty white person meme.
They slightly changed the spelling and the pronunciation because it was negro is the
that's the Spanish word, yeah.
For black or dark. Negro is the Italian, yeah.
Oh, Italian. I thought it was Spanish.
No, negro is Italian, negro is Spanish. You're right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. It's just me being a smart arse. Ignore me.
Fucking, this is what happens when you bring someone who knows linguistics into the conversation. I'm good with phonetics, but linguistics sometimes goes a bit over my head.
I gotta talk languages, politics, and it usually ends up with filthy talk. I have mentioned about transphobes fantasizing being felched, so there you go. That's my little bit of sexual.
I mean, that is the transphobe way. Like, I mean, fucking maybe if they weren't transphobes, they get the fun they want. But the
I'm gonna live down the Irish Catholic stereotype, you see, by being as dirty-minded and perverted, and I've seen like Paul from Marxism Today saying we'll go around, beat around the bush and go around the Rican to talk about something sexual. So I thought, right, fuck that. I'm gonna talk about butt plugs, anal beads, and double penetration and felching. So fuck it, I don't care. I'm sorry, I'm dragging the conversation down to this level, but this is what I do all the time.
I mean, this is.
I'm sorry, I'm bad. I'm degenerate.
This is the Irish experience.
Speaking of racism, though, I haven't been keeping up with what Ben Shapiro or any of those fuckers have been saying because I already know they're gonna say some racist shit. I mean, that dude said before that like Palestinians live in like sewage or whatever. So this motherfucker, he has nothing of value to say.
Ben Shapiro is just. I remember him saying facts don't care about your feelings, and say, facts don't care about your fucking feelings either, Benny boy. Fuck off.
Yeah, his stuff is purely feelings based. But I've also been seeing a lot of the like mainstream conservative politicians, like the liberal media, like they're focusing everything on Hamas, really, like because they'd like to pretend that they like stand in solidarity with Palestinians in their struggle when they really don't in any way, shape, or form. Like they're just like, oh, we need to peacefully do this. They need to stop doing all this. But like on the other end, like the conservative, that shit pisses me the fuck off. But on the other end, the conservatives too, that they're just like, they're not even pointing out like Hamas in particular. They're just extenuating like from Hamas. They're substantiating that all the way to like the whole of the Palestinian people, and they're like, oh no, we need to just get rid of all of them, flatten Gaza,
is like
eliminate them, like.
It's so mind-bendingly genocidal, and then like, oh yeah, the Palestinians are the bad ones, guys. The Palestinians are the bad ones. The Israelis are literally saying, flatten it and start again.
Yeah.
That like, I hope people know what the Nazis wanted to do with Eastern Europe and fucking like North Asia. Like, I hope people are aware of like that they wanted to genocide the Slavic people. They were going to pick and choose whom were considered Aryan and wipe out the rest. And usually that wouldn't even be the Slavs. It would be like the remainders of like Russian, Russo-Scandinavians, like the settlers that came in like what was like 1,000 years ago now. But like
The Scandinavian.
The Germans considered the Soviet Union like because Hitler did like this one of the most autistic things ever. He put it into percentages of Aryanism. I think the Russians scored quite high. I can't remember what it was exactly, but it was higher than the British, which is just finally it's hilarious to me. Like, and that is because of the Russian Empire and like the remainders of those people there. They fetishize those people, and that is where a lot of the anti-Semitism that the Nazis applied came from. It came from a few Germans that were already on that track with their Nordicism, and then it came from white. Fucking got the Roman problem where I can't pronounce my W's right. White Russians coming into it's the R's actually. It's the R's I can't pronounce right. I'm getting my letters mixed up. The white Russians coming into Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like also with like American conservative politicians I haven't seen, like a lot of them are tying the Israel-Palestine upsurge that's been going on. They're tying that to the immigration in the United States. And
and Europe.
Yeah, and Europe too, because I've been seeing a lot of far-right European politicians like on Twitter and shit posting like random propaganda videos of like a bunch of African immigrants or just Middle Eastern in general, like immigrants coming into the country, like, oh, they're coming in hordes and droves and all this shit. It's like, because Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted out that like, oh, you know, over 1.5 million immigrants have slipped past the border since Biden took office. If even 1% of them are terrorists, that's 15,000 terrorists. So like, she's just saying like, oh, so if like anyone gets through, is not a good person. None of them should be getting through. It's like, oh my god.
Okay, like even if like we're to play into this stupid idea, what's 1,000 people compared to 300 million?
Yeah, and it's not like they're even like organized. Like they're all like
they're just fucking people passing in. I don't think any of them are terrorists. I don't even think 0.00001% of them are terrorists. Because why would they be? Like if they were terrorists, they would have already done attacks by now. There've been fucking immigrants slipping in the border for fucking generations. It's not been a new Biden thing. There's a whole reason why like people like Trump and all that want to build a massive wall. It's because America has such a large border with Mexico that you can't border patrol it efficiently without having to like arm the fuck out of the border, which will like, so the US has deals with the cartels. They'll go and fucking use them as fear-mongering and stuff all the time, but they have deals with these groups. They have deals with the fucking Mexican government. If they break these deals, they could start an armed conflict. Like, there's a reason why they want to build a wall rather than putting loads of armed men by the borders and making it look like they're moving the National Guard in for an invasion. Like,
yeah. Like, I lived in a border city for 25 years, and I never met any one of them that were bad people. In fact, they're actually really pretty good people. And a lot of the times that seems to be the case, you know, because they know if they do anything wrong or do anything bad, they're going to get deported. A lot of them, they need to be over here working to send money back to their families. I mean, even if I grew up in when I grew up in a border city and there were, known illegal people that were living there, they were working very hard, usually multiple jobs at the same time, and sending most of their money back to their families back in Mexico and shit, or wherever else.
You don't understand. Like, the Mexicans are aligned with Hamas.
I mean, that's what they were saying like a couple years back with the whole caravan shit. Like, I didn't even follow that story too closely because it was just so fucking absurd. But they just stopped talking about it eventually because it was not true, obviously.
Yeah,
and it's that old thing, isn't it? I mean, they were saying the Iraqi army were ripping babies off life support in Kuwait. And
yeah, like these American conservatives, they actually use like Israel and the fucking wall around Gaza as an example of something good. It's like that shit is horrific.
Yeah, liberals go on about always compare Trump's wall to the Berlin Wall. I'm thinking that's, well, whatever you think of the Berlin Wall, it's amazing.
Yeah, they'll say that, and then on the other end, they won't even give a shit about the wall fucking around Gaza.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really
it's
sad.
an open air prison. Like,
yeah,
where's the Iron Dome? Where's the missile defenses of Palestine? How do they stop attacks from above?
Well, they don't.
That's why Israel's just abusing the fact that they can bomb them. They're just abusing that as much as they possibly can.
Ukraine is fighting for its life. Ukraine needs our help. Ukraine. But Palestine, oh no, you can't do that. That's terrorism. I mean, this is the insidious brainwashing of the media is actually really quite fucking scary when you think of it that way. How people just react.
The amount of liberal people that will then turn around and go, well, yeah, Palestine should be all right, but Hamas are terrorists, so this is not good. No violence, please. And it's like, okay, Hamas aren't even a terrorist organization. They do terrorism. No one's denying that, but they're more than a terrorist organization. Terrorism. Like, do I have to get the dictionary definition out for people to understand what terrorism is? Terrorism. The act of committing violence or political terror for a political movement to push sway amongst the people. It is specifically designed to get political actions, which means that they're not just a terrorist organization. They're a political party with interests. They're a bourgeois party, and have some elements that you could call neo-feudal, so you could argue there's some fascism going on with Hamas. No one's denying this. No one's saying Hamas are like, oh, joyful liberals or communists. No, they're not even social democrats. Like, they're right-wing. No one's denying that. However, Palestine's in a liberation movement. No one turned around and went, the KMT, they're right-wing, so we're going to have to fucking kill them, and then we'll fight the Japanese. No, they fought with them against the Japanese because they had to. They had no other choice. What choice do you have?
Unfortunately, this is the same excuse I hear from people telling me I should support Russian aggression in Ukraine. Somebody said that to me. He said, "What about that?" And I went,
totally absurd. It's like a total lack of any type of dialectical materialist analysis. It's like not even a fucking national liberation movement.
these are the Z heads. They're just they just
lack the brain capacity.
What's it?
Analysis.
They're the same people who said, like, well, Stalin was against homosexuality. Che Guevara was referred to people who, had macho homophobic views. Fidel Castro said this, and they often forget to say Fidel Castro later said that
he was wrong.
That stance that I took was wrong because I didn't know any better, and now I changed my opinion. They completely ignore that bit and just say Fidel said this, Che said that, so therefore homosexuality.
Marx dropped the hard R N word, so
it's degeneracy.
Oh no, he used the it might be a translation issue, but he used the one with the OE, like the really bad one. But that might be an English translation issue because English people be very racist. Can't say my ass. Yeah. Very racist. I heard that from a comrade. Apparently, in the German versions, like the original German version, like he doesn't use those specific slurs. But I need to read them in German and then check because I don't know. It might actually be a lie from someone who wants to make Marx seem like a complete fucking good guy. But Marx is some bad shit. His early positions on feminism and that was just like a good chunk of his time as a Marxist were shite. Like he was sexist, no doubt about it.
Most of the time before the Paris Commune, yeah.
Yeah, and then the Paris Commune rose up, and then Marx kind of had to sit there and accept that he was fucking wrong, as all these women take arms and fucking fight for their fucking liberation. That's the thing. People need to remember the first ever socialist experiment, Paris Commune. Everyone will go, the Soviet Union. No, it was Paris Commune. It was a women's movement. In the Soviet Union as well, before it went all conservative and weird, there was a lot of feminism that directed its movement forward. There's a reason Lenin doesn't just go, it's a movement of the proletariat. He says the movement of the oppressed peoples. And that's because all these people are part of the proletariat, but they're oppressed in different ways. And those oppressions are a part of that struggle. They're core and they're key to it. And so we can't just look at the white male proletariat. We have to look at the oppressed peoples that make up the proletariat. It's an international movement. It's not like it's just some national thing. Even when you make the socialism in one country, that's a step in an international movement, not a step in a national one. Unless it's tied to a national liberation struggle, then it's a step in both. But it's never separated from the international movement. A communist struggle is always tied to it. That's basic communism. Goes back to the first international. I can't believe I have to tell this to people who call themselves communists and claim they've read all this, that, and the other. I think maybe they might want to read Lenin's decree on the third international, because It might teach them something.
It also has like I noticed like a lot of like Trotskyite type of thinking, like whether they're pro or anti against it, but they still have the same framing. Like in terms of like with the Israel-Palestine situation going on, people are saying like, oh, supporting Palestine is supporting Hamas. It's like, no, not really. And even if we're saying ally with Hamas, it doesn't mean we're pro-Hamas there either. The communists should have their own independence away from Hamas, but while maintaining that independence, still work with them towards national liberation, gain hegemony of the national movement away from Hamas towards something more progressive with the communists. That should be the job of the communists there. And whether people disagree with that on one end or the other, they're having some type of deviation from the actual communist line, what it should be towards national liberation movement.
Yeah, basically. I was going to say something then, I can't remember what it was. I've
been noticing it more so with like some anarchist types, which is kind of unfortunate. The ones that are saying like, oh, Hamas is reactionary.
Oh God!
All this shit. So like, they can't even like support them. That's a shit position. But I've also seen other people that are being a little too hype about Hamas. They're progressive at the time being in the national liberation struggle until they vacillate away from them. Because we already see there's connections with Hamas, with like foreign imperialists like Iran and shit like that. But even that being so, they're still a vacillating force, meaning like and right now in the defense of the Palestinian people, they could still be allied with. So we should ally with them.
There's a lot of anarchists that are actually not really. I mean, it depends on your definition of anarchism, but some of them are just rad libs trying to pretend that they're a lot more militant than they actually are. I've found that a lot. I found that as well with lots of MLs, and even some people who identified as Maoists. So I don't tend to pigeonhole myself as anything at the minute. But yeah,
I'm seeing different deviations from all different types.
To be fair, like there is like a problem on the internet, especially for like weird, like cultish, like supposed Maoists that aren't really Maoists.
Yes, very much.
Like for me, like it should be. For me, it's kind of expected if they just identify as ML, because ML is just kind of like the go-to thing when you're trying to be a Marxist, So like people that
Christianite detected. If they don't say they are an ARML, you're like, okay, I'm sitting on the edge of my seat now. Better not be a Christianite. Get with enough of these bastards.
Like if someone calls themselves an ML, I gotta kind of go through like a vetting process with them. Like if someone calls themselves like a Maoist or something like that, I would expect at least a certain, degree
kind of like principle, because like Maoists and ARMLs have like hold the position of being outright anti-revisionists, and so when you find a Maoist that's revisionist, it's like,
yeah, it's like, is this a person that's like following MZT and just calling themselves a Maoist? Like,
oh my God, those guys are the worst.
Yeah, like they're just these dangists that call themselves Maoists. It's like,
Jesus, oh God, oh fucking hell, yeah.
And that's the whole other thing too. Is I haven't been engaging with them too much, but I have been seeing this trend as well. Like the ones that are like pro-China and pretending that they're also at the same time pro-Palestine, when China's relations with Israel is not good in comparison, in regards to the actions towards Palestine. Like China's out here talking about a two-state solution and all this bullshit. They're pushing for imperialist peace rather than actual people, allowing them to fight for their national liberation and supporting them in doing so.
Well, the two-state solution was done in Ireland. You got Northern Ireland and the Irish Free State, and look how that turned out.
It's been a pissing match. Northern Ireland, still to this day, has armed fucking cars, and we're not talking like just the SUVs you get in America that are a bit armored. We're talking like full-blown military vehicles, like the Land Rovers that have the massive armor plating on them. They're designed to be able to take IEDs. Like they just drive around. They just drive around all the time. Like Ireland, like in the north, has not been any less fascist than it was before, other than there's slightly more votability in the parliament.
The Land Rovers don't look. They're not grey. They're more white. Police.
They're painted like a police car, but they're literally just a military vehicle that's been repurposed.
They used to look more militarized in the old days of the Troubles.
It'd be like a greyish greenish color.
Yeah. And now they there's a line from a song by this guy Kieran Murphy who says the Jeeps don't look so strange. That's a great song. I recommend it called "They'll Always Be the RUC" to me. It's a absolute belter of a modern day rebel song. But it's true. They've got a harp. They've got more harps on the badges to make it look as if they care about the Irishness.
Yeah, now that the police are a protective force, they're just protecting the Irish people from possible IRAs and stuff.
Yeah.
And those police vehicles very often will pick people up off the streets. If they consider that you're a fucking Republican, I mean, they're not going to, like, the laws that allow them to do indiscriminate shit are gone, technically. But they will pick you up off the street and they will interrogate the shit out of you and they'll treat you like a monster. They'll treat you like a creature.
Yes.
And sitting in the back of one of those vans, armored up to fucking teeth. It's the most scariest thing you can get involved in, today. And it's nowhere near as scary as the shit that was going on in the Troubles. In the Troubles, they had the Emergency Powers Act. The Emergency Powers Act let them do shit that the American police aren't even allowed to do and get away with. It's so fucked.
Stripping people naked and throwing them out of helicopters, but helicopters were only a couple of feet off the ground, but they didn't know. The person who was bollock naked in the place, blindfolded, didn't know that.
Yeah, and they would.
It happened all the time.
It was a lot of psychological trauma like that. There was a lot of sexual assault. Anything that happened could be locked away, burnt as a document. There was no ability for anyone to request police documents. You could deny relatives and friends the ability to visit people, deny people parole, deny people any court of justice. They can be criminally condemned by the police themselves, which weren't just the police. They were a militant force. They were a military police, and they were very tied in with the fascist paramilitaries as well as the British military.
Yeah, and like all these other fucking Western countries and shit, they're just like falling in line with Israel and their fucking genocidal bullshit with this. Like they're cutting aid to Palestine, aid that Palestine very much relies on. That's not an insignificant thing. They very much rely on fucking aid. For any type of resources, really, but and like all these other fucking Western countries and shit, there's thankfully a lot of pro-Palestinian solidarity marches and shit, but they're not even allowed. A lot of countries are fucking cracking down on that shit. I mean, France was cracking down on them, Italy's cracking down on them, all over
Britain,
the fucking
the largely Asian, South Asian cabinets, just to show how non-racist they are. They can be as blatantly fascist as Mussolini ever was, but they're Asian, so they're not racist. Go figure. Like Israel can't be fascist because they're Jewish. It's the same logic as that, They're trying to bring in laws to say that waving Palestinian flags in public or displaying one is an act of anti-Semitism and a hate crime, so it must be banned.
Yeah.
And saying "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." That's apparently they're trying to outlaw that as a chant.
Wow.
I think it's Suella Braverman. She's something like home. I forget who does what fucking job. Because as far as I'm concerned, they're all. How should I say it without getting shut down?
They're basically the same person.
Stand them against a brickwork structure and let them get gently acquainted with our beautifully crafted soft metal mini sculptures, approximately 7 millimeters in size. Does that give you?
Yeah,
that's how I get away with getting banned off Facebook and YouTube by not giving them.
Before Europe was pretty screwed before Stalin invented brick walls. Now he invented it for different purposes than they've been used since.
Shit. Yeah, I mean, in the
Stalin
US
did a few things wrong, but he did some good things as well. Let's give him credit now.
Yeah, this being one of them. Yeah.
I'll defend Comrade Joe, but I won't deify him like these fucking patsops and weirdos do.
Oh, I mean, whenever people deify Marxists, it's like mega sus. But
yeah, that's weird.
Well, it's funny because when those people like deify him, they don't deify him for any of his substance. They actually despise his substance. Like they care about superficial shit that's either not completely confirmed or stuff that just objectively sucks and has like no theoretical backing to it, like homophobia and shit like that. So
God, fucking Gorky.
Yeah. That's the shit they accept. But if you pull up anything about Stalin in regards to like how socialism should be set up or how a communist party should be run or like all these different like communist fucking principles that he talks about. Talk about anything about like that Stalin wrote about like the theory of productive forces and economic form of socialism in the USSR. Talk about any of this that he actually talked about all throughout the 20s and 30s and shit. Most of the 30s at least. Or bring up what socialism in one country actually means in the Marxist-Leninist context and how it's not just some bullshit national communist fucking bullshit like that.
I don't know which is worse, them glorifying it or the Trotskyists saying, "Oh, socialism in one country is terrible. You can't have socialism in one country." It's like, fuck off with you. Jesus, the Western left is. I mean, the British left, I can categorically state, is 100% a joke now. There is no British left. I mean, even the US, which is terrible, at least you got pantherism. At least you got militant groups on the street. In the UK, their idea of militancy is something like, "Oh, let's go and vote for a party that's slightly more left wing than the Labour Party." That's British militancy.
Corbyn should split from the Labour Party. It will save us all. We can have socialism, guys.
Have a new party that's got Jeremy Corbyn as the leader, and will vote the fascism away.
They don't seem to understand that the Labour Party have always represented social fascism in response to conservative fascism. It's always been their role. They literally, like, the Labour Party started off distinctly, and I mean the parliamentary Labour Party, not the grassroots one, started distinctly from its original, like, it was explicit about it originally, that they started as a means to combat the Marxist movement and anarchists, basically to try and drain away from the communist movement. This is one of the big shows that show that like social democracy has always had these problems, even when the socialists were actually united with them. The Labour Party emerged before the break between the socialists and the social democrats. It was a big show that this was always the way it was going to be, and any principled Marxist at the time knew this. Like, it was a temporary alliance. Everyone knew it was a temporary alliance. It was like, in a sense, like a united front operates. It has a means, and when that means reaches its end, everyone wants to kill each other. Well, not exactly, but basically.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like the fledgling Labour Party led a round of applause cheering on the murder of James Connolly by the British state in 1916. I mean, only a few years later, the SPD gave the green light to the Freikorps to go there and murder the Spartakists in Germany, and Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht were the two well-known casualties of that. So it's no secret that sucked them all over. Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna be cheering when if the Palestinians are wiped out too. They're gonna do the same shit.
Sure.
They're gonna be like, "Oh, thank goodness! Now we don't have to pretend to actually care about that struggle."
Well, yeah. I mean, there might be some that go, "Oh, isn't it?" I mean, a lot of them do the, "Oh, I know, isn't it awful? Isn't it ghastly?" And then
they're gonna do that shit.
I mean, that's the thing. Liberals do that all the time. Is I know, isn't it awful? Isn't it? Oh, isn't it ghastly? Isn't it terrible?
Don't you wish we could do something to stop Israel?
The minute you fight back, "Oh no, you can't do that. No, that's terrorism, blah 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 blah."
Yeah, like Cornel West and Bernie Sanders came out with statements that were just so hilariously stupid.
I haven't been paying attention, to be honest, because I just zoned out.
So like they've been doing like this whole like, "Oh yeah, the genocide against the Palestinians is bad, but I condemn the barbarism at play." It's like the barbaric tactics, and it's like, bruh, he's not using like barbarism in like the Marxist context of like like essentially fascism. Like that's what barbarism usually is defined by. Fascism and older forms of class dominance and power, like patriarchy. Patriarchy is a form of barbarism. He's using it in the sense of like, "Oh, these violent barbarians." It's the Roman use of the term. Like,
yes. Barbarian means like foreigner, doesn't it, or something, or the others.
I think it's the others.
Because it's I believe that the woman's name Barbara comes from that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means like the other side of the fence, so to speak, the others.
Yeah, it was a way of othering the German people. It was used against other peoples as well. I think Celts are also sometimes called barbarians, but it was
Yeah,
usually
alright.
used against the Germanics.
Yeah. Yeah, the Germans, again, the Germans were okay. It's when they start acting like fucking Romans. It's fucking Romans. Romantic
It's
bullshit.
the fact that we had like so much common ground, like the Celtic peoples and the German people had so much common ground in fighting the Romans. And then when the Romans were gone, they were like, "Oh well, you know what? There's a void here. So we've decided to become Romans, guys. Oh look, Celtic lands. We must take those." And so we saw it
Yeah.
in France, the Frankish, like the lands they took originally, what the actual Frankish territories, not all of France, were Celtic lands originally, and they've wiped out the Celts that used to be there. The English, self-explanatory. German expansionism, Belgium in its weird existence, it took over Celtic lands. With the rest of France, Spain, loads of Celtic nations we could get into there, and there's this like path moving forward of the Germanic peoples like turning into Romans. It's this common practice of colonialism that has just gone way back and has developed over time. And what we see when these oppressions are always like a destruction of people's culture. That's the main part of it. But then there's always these crimes against humanity that come with it, because where there's a dominating force, there's a liberation force. There's an attempt to stop it, and that liberation force has to commit to some form of violence if they want to survive. Like the Palestinians, for example, they're not choosing violence because they chose it. They're choosing violence because they have no other choice. Like,
Yeah,
what else are they
always
supposed to
the way.
do?
Yeah.
Oh, it's always. I mean, people. I always say to people, do you think they just do it because they like it? People don't. They don't. I mean, apart from, I think the percentage of the population that just do violence because they can tends to be about 2 to 3% of the population. They're often the ones who get diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder. They're a very tiny minority of people that actually do that because they like it. They become serial killers and stuff like that. They're very rare. They're a very, very rare occurrence. It's not generally in people's nature to be violent for the sake of it.
It can
It's
even like
violent.
shock people that like a lot of bourgeois people don't even like that sort of shit. Like they're so disconnected from it. They don't care what violence their like like their existence causes. But like direct violence, they don't want anything to do with it. Like a lot of them are clean freaks and they don't even like to see blood. And like they just can't they can't they can't humanize the lower class. The lower class are
Yeah.
like drones to them, so they just don't
Yeah.
care. But there are a lot of them that like they're not like fetishizing violence 24/7 like a lot of people would perceive. It's just their class position that like exists off of violence. And so like we're seeing the opposite in a liberation struggle. The bourgeoisie, their class position exists off violence. They have to be violent to survive. Well, this is the same thing here, but in the opposite situation. Like, the Palestinian existence doesn't thrive off violence like the bourgeoisie does. However, to thrive against the oppression of the Israeli settler colonists, which is also an oppression of the Israeli bourgeoisie, they have to commit to a form of defensive violence. They have to fight back. They're not the ones starting the fight. Like, the proletariat never start the fight against the bourgeoisie. The fight started the moment capitalism started to exist.
Sure.
Oh, like the 1400s, the 1500s. That's when the start of the fight between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie began, and it's been going on ever since. It never stopped. There's never been such thing as the end of class war yet. Like, even in the Soviet Union, class war hadn't ended. It's like...
It's another shit, too, where it's like all the coverage of Israel-Palestine going on. A lot. I keep on saying this fucking shit, and it's pissing me off so much every time I fucking see it. They always say the unprovoked attacks on Israeli citizens.
Oh, Jesus.
It's like you don't even have to go that far back. Like there's so many fucking shit, so many attacks that have happened. Like even this year, like
Yeah.
the thing that comes to mind for me immediately was like it was just in April. It probably been happening multiple times since then. This year when they fucking Israeli forces fucking raided the a mosque and fucking arrested like a shit ton of-
Al-Aqsa.
Yeah, and
Oh,
Al-Aqsa shit
Yeah,
going
yeah,
on.
yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up seeing this crap looking back at news footage of the 1980s on the BBC, which used to praise itself on being like imbalanced, impartial and unbalanced and all this. That's the biggest joke. Yeah, exactly. It's risible. They used to say things like 2 terrorists were shot dead by security forces, and then let's say 2 soldiers were murdered by terrorists, and then there were grieving widows and fatherless children, and the somber tone and the terrible, it was always this somber tone of the grieving widows left behind. These terrorists, murderers, and blah blah blah, and all that, But then the other side happens. 3 terrorist suspects were shot dead by security forces. That's how it was, and it's kind of the same thing.
Or they'll always like call them Catholics, and they'll say like Catholics have died, Protestants have been murdered, and they'll always word it like that. We're seeing the same thing now. We're seeing Palestinians dead, Israelis murdered,
being killed or murdered. Yes. Yeah. It's I mean it's like the Israeli government, the Syrian regime, the Russian regime, Ukrainian government, Cuban regime, Venezuelan regime. I mean, why? The Libyan regime. That's been going around that's been there for decades. 40 years ago, you'd see news footage. The Polish communist regime, the Soviet regime.
It's an interesting twist of the term regime or regime, however you want to say it. Like, it's, I know in this context it's said as regime, but, like, the term just means, like highly organized and, like, quite strict. Like, this is all it kind of means. Like, it's just, like, strict organization. So, like, isn't every government a regime? Like...
It's just a way of making it sound evil. It's like... Yeah. I mean, a regime. It's the French word, isn't it? I think régimen is the Spanish.
Yeah,
and it just means system, basically.
Yeah, and in French it's régime.
Is it régime?
So it's fun if you live here in the U.S. Whenever you're talking to like one of those like super pro-patriotic people, and you call it the American Empire, they get real mad.
Yeah,
they'll get mad, but then they'll defend it. So.
I get people over here, I say about Britain's an imperial power, they go, duh, Britain's not an empire anymore. I go,
it is, though, it is. Like, they still have the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is still one of the key players in imperial organization. Everyone looks at Britain and go, oh, look, their GDP's, like, lower than Russia's. They're not an empire anymore, guys. They're just, like, they lost all their colonies and now they're really poor. If you went back and only looked at the GDP of just Great Britain, which no communist was ever doing back in them days, when they were assessing the British Empire, they were assessing the British Empire. That's Britain, Canada, Australia, India, etc., 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 etc. That etc. still exists to this day. Even India, 10% of the Indian industry is owned by the British. Like,
yes.
They heavily invest in a lot of other industry in India. They own like a good chunk of Irish industry. I don't think it's the case with this can, but if you go get yourself a can of anything made by Britvic, like Tango and stuff, which is a British company, it's literally called Britvic. Do you know where they produce Britvic cans? Not Northern Ireland. Ireland.
The Free State.
Yeah.
Australia.
Because, we own so much, different forms of production there, either through, capitalists there that are under our influence, or direct ownership as well. And, there's also that we have the most amount of control over Ireland's borders. The British do, sorry. The British have most amount of control over the Irish borders. They have the control over the Irish seas. They control its trade. The US and EU control its finances because they're the biggest economic investors in Ireland. And so where's the freedom? Where's the freedom of the Free State? It's sham.
It's bullshit. The Free State, I mean, they call it the Republic of Ireland, but it's not. It's the Irish Free State. It's just they changed the window dressing, basically.
They stopped having the monarch as their leader, but spiritually it's still dominated by them.
Yeah, I mean, Dublin Castle is owned by Britain. The Irish taxpayer pays money. The Irish tax goes towards the rent of renting Dublin Castle from the British owners. Rosslare Harbour in County Waterford, or is it Wexford? I forget. Somewhere in the southeast.
I think it's Wexford.
I think it's Wexford, but it's owned by British landlords. Some Irish TD has tried to bring it up in the so-called Dáil. It's Leinster House. It's not the Dáil. The Dáil that was on the original agenda is not the Dáil they have. So I don't like calling it the fucking Dáil. It's just Leinster House, the seat of the Irish puppet comprador government. It's a puppet regime of Britain. It's also a puppet regime of the USA and the EU now as well. But
it's also a tax haven for the EU, and they've been treating Ireland like shit for it. Ireland is not. Everyone's going like, "Oh, look, Ireland's developing now. They're free from the British." No, they're not. Bollocks. Go into like most of Ireland. It is fucking like abandoned and barely industrialized in so many areas. Like to turn around and say, "Oh, Ireland is doing well now. They're industrialized and all that." Yeah, if you're in Dublin, like actually go into like the west of Ireland and then try and tell me.
My ma will confirm that. She's living over there, and she said exactly that.
You go west of Ireland or down south, and it is not so great, especially if you're in the southwest, because in the west and the southwest, you're far away from the EU and the British, so they don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about what trade they can get, and the EU doesn't even go for the south of Ireland. They go for the British. The British are the way they get their trade into Ireland.
It's the Pale. It's Dublin and the Pale, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, there's working class people in Dublin who are really shafted as well. Let's be fair.
Oh yeah, no, it's still bad there.
Yeah. But I mean, the crime rate in Dublin is, I think, it's worse than Belfast ever was. Always has been. I mean,
it's let's say as well, like the industrial conditions, because Ireland is still used as an export for industry. They're pretty bad. I mean, like everyone's got like the way China has the industry exported to them. That's what the fucking American computer companies were doing to Ireland in the 1960s all the way up to the 1990s and 2000s.
Yeah,
like Irish people would be producing your circuit boards and your fucking your graphics cards, your motherboards, your CPUs. They began produced in Ireland. Apple Computers exploited Irish production.
Japan, there was Hino trucks were also built in Ireland. Back in the 70s when I was a child.
Yep.
There was I remember there was Hino trucks. You never saw them in the UK, but you saw them all the time in Ireland because they were put together in Irish factories, but they were a Japanese company. So Japan to some extent, but not as much. Mainly US, the UK, and of course now the EU. The EU didn't even really exist the way it does now when I was a child. The
EEC was a little different. The British actually had a higher standing in the EEC than the EU, which is why when the EU was formed, the British started throwing a tantrum.
Yeah, we don't want to be told what to do by anybody else. That's for us to do. Not we don't like being on the receiving end of it.
We started this union and we want to rule this union. There was actually jokes from the Labour Party about Margaret Thatcher now becoming the high priestess or like the high ruler of Europe.
Oh man!
It's one of the few times I enjoy listening to the Labour Party is when they were criticizing Maggie, because that was fun. That's how Jeremy Corbyn actually got originally popular. Was he stood up to Maggie, and this was back when he was like pro Sinn Féin, pro fucking like Palestinian liberation, pro Irish liberation. Like he used to be cool. Like even though he was still Labour, Jeremy used to actually be kind of cool. And then like the 2000s happened, and I don't know what the fuck happened to him. Like guy rusted up by 2010s. Like
it's what happens when you're part of a bourgeois party. You have to toe the line and tone everything down. And
I also
I got nothing against. I mean, I don't hate Jeremy Corbyn. I think fair play to the guy, but he's a fucking politician. What was I going to say? I had me and the Engelsist, bless him. Shout out to Luke there. We did a stream on here, and we were talking about Ireland because both of us are like Irish diaspora, and it was him that said it's a damning indictment into the Irish Free States, the amount of cultural cringe and self-loathing that we have over there. He said Wales under English occupation has done better at keeping its own language alive than Ireland has. Nobody speaks Irish. I mean, there are pockets of it, but those pockets are getting even smaller and smaller because the comprador fucking puppets in the Dáil, the so-called Dáil in Leinster House, don't give a shit about the Irish language. They speak English all the time, and even though they have Irish language channels and they have Irish language is compulsory in schools, there's this kind of self-loathing in Ireland where people go, "Oh, what do you want to learn that for? Isn't it better we just learn English because all the Brits and the Yanks speak it?" So
wow,
it's embarrassing. I mean. The Welsh, the Cymry crowd are much more proud of their language. I'll give them that. Whatever, they don't have this kind of cringe. They don't seem to have anyway. They've got a kind of there's a lot of bitterness amongst them, but there's this kind of like I mean, that fucking song by the Cranberries, Zombie, and
God.
people like that is often quite approved of by a lot of people in the Irish Free State. And people in the Irish diaspora, like myself, don't get recognised as being Irish, whereas we get told by people in the North, you're all right, son, you're one of us. But people in the Free State say, you're not Irish, you're fucking English. To which they get free plastic surgery from me, courtesy of my head.
Basically, like, you can really spot when you find, like, an Irish person that believes in the idiocracy of whiteness when they start saying, like, oh, you're not real Irish. Ireland for Ireland is a fucking, like, dog whistle. Like, Ireland for Irish people, sorry. Ireland for the Irish. It's a dog whistle to white supremacy, and because, like, they're trying to suggest that there's, like, just this specific, like biological group of people that are Irish, and it's like, no. Like, Ireland has always had, like, loads of people from different groups become a part of it, like, you know, the Black Irish community, for example.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Ireland for the Irish wasn't always like that. It was a lot of it was just a kind of like breaking away from Britain and loyalism.
Originally, yeah, but it was co-opted during the Troubles by white supremacists.
Yes, exactly. Another thing was, I've lost what I was going to say now. Fuck. Oh yeah, the ones who say that, these ethno-nationalists, they claim to be the most Irish of Irish, and they've got Norman names, no Anglo-Norman bloody names, because they're the ruling classes in Ireland are mostly. They're either British of Protestant descent, but they married into Catholic families, so their kids were grown. The generation down were raised as Catholics, so they're Irish Catholics now. But a lot of them have got either English planter names or Anglo-Norman names, because the Anglo-Normans came over in the 12th century.
Yeah,
and they're still there. And a lot of the ruling classes, especially the West Brits as we call them, are fucking Normans. If you got a name like Roach, comes from La Roche. Burke. The Burgo, Irish name, Burke. Fitzgerald, Fitzsimmons, Fitzroy, Fitzgibbon.
Like Fitzgerald is one that stands out so much as Norman.
It's a Norman name. It's a Norman name.
And
there's some good Irish people with, good Irish Republicans who've got Norman names. So I'm not an ethno.
Yeah, it's not so much about that's been a problem. It's more so that these people are being like exclusive about being like this genetic Irish people. Even though they themselves are like part English, part Norman, part French, part this, part that. And it's like we all are. And that's why it's important for ethnicity to be diverse and like accepting of other people from other cultures as they integrate with said ethnicity.
I can boast I have a proper Gaelic name as well, because I get these people saying, you're not Irish, and they've got like English. Some fucker was doing this to me. He was singing the Irish national anthem, just sticking his fingers up like that at me, going, yeah, fuck off.
Well, they can fuck off, because my fucking surname is Galician, so like they can actually go piss themselves.
Well, there you go. I mean, I said that. This fucker that was doing this had an English name. He had the same fucking surname as the Queen bastard mother. It was Lyons. Her name was Bowes Lyons.
My god!
My name, I'm not going to give it my surname is one of the old Gaelic clans beginning with an O. You know those.
Yeah.
Fucker was there going, yeah, fucking English bastard. I went, what's my name, motherfucker? What's your fucking name, you cunt?
And also, a lot of those old names have, like, unfortunately suffered Anglification. Like, O'Reilly, for example, it's not the original formulation of the name. It's been sort of, like, twisted around a bit because of colonialism. And it's something like, we all have to suffer. We've all had to deal with, like, being Normanized and Anglicized in the same way that, like, I've also got Scottish descent, so the same way the Scots were, the same way the Northern English were, especially given that Northern England was, like half of it was Celtic, like most of it was stolen from Scotland in the north, and Cymru, and, like, the rest of it also had loads of Celtic peoples. Yorkshire, for example, was like a mixture of like Scots Celts and the Cumbrians, and the Cumbrians were wiped out by the Scottish and the English in 1250 through cultural genocide. Basically, the people still exist. If we're gonna do this weird like genetic shit, like, the people still exist, but they've been culturally genocided. They've been wiped away and then replaced with Anglos and Scots. But like still to this day, there's a lot of like Scottish influence in Yorkshire, and this way when you fucking hear Yorkshire, it has like a bit of a fucking like almost like upper bracket sort of mix that you see with Scottish.
Geordie as well, where I live. Yeah.
Oh, Geordie is very Scottish.
Can you proper? Can you like an hour of me, like? I'm fucking comment, like, you know, I'm talking like that, man, and people can't understand the fucking word I'm saying, like, you know what I mean?
Geordie uses like
he does
old
that.
school Scots English more than like Scots people use Scots English. Because that's what we're hearing there. Like basically what happened when English became like standardized in Scotland is a lot of the Scottish words just sort of like mapped into English words, and so you hear a lot of like crossover words with Scotland, and they fucking like, you know, titty in the bit sort of shit. You see this with Yorkshire as well. A 10-10-10 is a Yorkshire phrase, so it isn't in the 10. And it's all it is it's ent and 10. But you say 10-10-10. And, you know, like someone who knows the actual Yorkshire dialect will understand what the fuck you're saying. You say it to English people, you go 10-10-10 when they ask what's in the 10. They don't fucking know.
Yeah. I mean, there was a little funny story that back in 2011, I think it was. We all did an anti-cuts protest, and a bunch of us went down. I got mixed up with a bunch of anarchists, and there was a bit of a black bloc going on. Anyway, I got stuck in a taxi with a few of them, and we were one of these little wankers was there talking about. He was one of those people that like to brag that he was militant, when in actual fact he wasn't. He was bragging about smashing windows of banks and all this down a high street in London. Oh, you know, were you there when this? And we were saying, yeah. So the rest of us sat there talking to him, and we all lived in Newcastle. We all talked in our biggest Geordie dialects in front of the taxi driver, because this little twat was mouthing off about smashing windows, bragging about it. So we're going like, yeah, fucking shut your gob, you wished you fucking daft twat, fucking didn't talk shit, talking like that, like, you know what I mean?
I understood exactly what you said there, and that's brilliant.
It was fucking gas. I'm going, yeah, man, had your fucking gob, man, you fucking talking shit. Didn't fucking talk about that, like, you fucking numpty. What you fucking doing, you fucking doing? And it was like, they're all, and I thought the taxi driver must have been going, what the fucking hell are they talking about? Fucking can't understand these bloody northerners. It's like, you know.
It's like,
anyway, yes. The people in Turtle Island are all listening to this going, what the fuck are they talking about?
The UK is so much more complicated than people think. People think Britain is a nation, like just one nation. Like, even there's even English people that might argue that like England isn't a functional one nation. So like there is just so many arguments going on about that right now.
I've heard people in Newcastle on Tyne saying, I'm not English, I'm a Geordie.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, people need to know the border to Scotland before the war between the Scottish clans and the English was with Yorkshire. Like,
yeah. Well, there's as you come out of County Durham, which is just south of Tyneside. Well, it's quite a way down south, but it's close. It comes up to the Yorkshire border, and there's a place there called Scotch Corner, and that implies that Scotland was basically that's where Scotland ended.
Also, you can tell with a lot of the northern names of Yorkshire that it has a lot of Celtic influence. Durham. Durham sounds like a place up near Glasgow.
Durham. It's the only county in England that's actually called a county as opposed to a shire.
Oh my god, yeah.
County Durham as opposed to Yorkshire, Lancashire, Staffordshire.
Oh god, I'm a fucking Staffordshire. Don't talk about that fucker.
In Staffordshire. I lived in Staffordshire. I've lived in Warwickshire, I think.
Existing in Staffordshire is not quite living.
Cannot argue with that one.
It is like stereotyped as the most depressed shire in the entire country, and it's probably true.
It's a bit grim. It's a bit grim, like.
Especially since it became a sacrifice zone. But what's it as well? Like, keeping on the topic of colonialism, before we move back onto the Palestine thing, I think like the Scousers need to be mentioned as well, because when talking about the Irish struggle, you can't really avoid the Scousers. So Scousers came over during the Great Famine. They're actually quite a recent thing. And like they came into Liverpool. Anyone who thinks, Liverpool are those fucking Scousers, aren't they? No, like they've become like the standard Liverpudlian in people's eyes, but they're actually not. The Liverpudlians are Cymraeg, or Welsh if you want to use slurs, but I don't. Like the use of that word, and you know what's it like? I'm a bit of a mixed bag. I'm also part Cymraeg. I don't know how I'm just like I actually had someone on the bus. I'm gonna waver my heritage, and I'm gonna use the word explicitly. I was called a gypsy when I said that I like someone was like, "Oh, you got a funny accent." I was like, "Yeah, I'm Irish, Scottish, Cymraeg, and English." And they go, "Ah, wait, well, you're a real mixed bag of a gypsy, ain't you?" What?
Okay.
Shit in hell. Like, fucking hell. Like, pull that word out of your fucking English gob, you cheeky shite. Like, fucking next thing you know, he's gonna be calling me a fucking pikey.
Oh.
Yeah. You know how many fights you'll start just by fucking mentioning that word? Like, ooh.
In Ireland, they use knacker, which is a real nasty one. That's the one, or tinker. Tinker's bad.
Oh my god, yeah, Tinker's really fucking
The
bad.
reason, I mean, originally they were just words for because a lot of the travelers in Ireland, this isn't the Roma gypsies now. These are the Irish travelers. They used to work as tinsmiths, or as they'd collect carcasses for the knackers yard. But so the term tinker became a nasty slur, and so did knackers. It's like the N word.
Yeah, it's like Tinker was basically like your Tinker boys. So it was basically in a way of like saying like boy in like America. It's like, oh, you're a bitch, you're a tinkers. You know, you sort out at bottom of the trash shit. Like you get the laugh-in jobs. Same as Knacker. Knacker's getting into that like fucking like wiping up the arse all of the country. You are bottom of the barrel.
Wait, is there like any connection between Tinkerbell and that? Like,
no, that's somewhat different.
Some different shit. I was like, huh.
Tinker is tinker just means a tinsmith.
Yeah. The term tinkerer is tied with the term tinker. But like when you say tinkerer, you're not really using the slur. You're on about someone who like does mechanical stuff. But a tinker, that's like a slur about being a tinsmith, basically.
Yeah, it wasn't always a slur.
Originally, it was just a job description, but it changed because of the way it was used. It's actually kind of like the word Paki. Paki was originally just like, well, there's someone from Pakistan. Like, you know, you don't call an Afghanistan an Afghanistani unless you're like an American. You call them an Afghani. But because of white people, Paki has become a racial term. Dependent. I've been told by this by comrades from the region, but like that doesn't really justify it anyway. But like, it's still not a racial term initially. It's about how you say it. Because the way English people say it is that, oh, those fucking Pakis, like, they're coming stealing our jobs and fucking, you know, doing shit to our women, etc. Like, you know,
awful.
It's awful, and it's outright racism. But the term itself is just the name of a people. And that's how fucking diabolical it is.
It's like, it's used like the B word for Mexican and people that get confused with being Mexican in the US. The reference to what they call them, pulses, beans. Basically, they refer to so-called Latino people as that nasty slur.
Yeah,
and it's in
that one.
Say again.
I'm well aware of that one.
Yeah, of course you are. Well, the word Pakistani is used in much the same way against South Asian people over here. It's very much it's generally something you don't tend to say, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something you can say. I mean, you can use the word, and you can use racial slurs in an ironic kind of a way. If you're, I mean, I've said things like, you know, the way I'd say to my black friends, like, you remember when that fucker used to refer to you by that word, and they go, oh yeah.
I don't know. I disagree. I think times have changed. Like, we don't really have a right to say certain things.
I'm going back 10 or 20 years now, and it wasn't such a big deal then. But
I don't feel like I have any connection to my white side of the family, especially considering, you know, my grandma on my white side of the family called my mom a back that happened to be wet. So if you want to switch those words around.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad one.
It's really up there in slurs for Latino people. Like, it's really up there.
Yeah.
So maybe it's because it's 5 o'clock in the morning or 5:30 in the morning. My brain's a bit mashed. That didn't really sink in.
Yeah, they're basically just making fun of agricultural workers for the most part, like working out in the fields and shit.
Oh right, yes. Sorry, yeah.
But yeah, no, like
Yeah, like,
Slurs, the thing is with slurs that makes us not able to say slurs that don't belong to us is they're reclaimed terms. And the right of reclaim means the stopping of people from oppressive groups using it. And so white people can't use black people slurs and like, straight people can't use homosexual slurs because they've been part of an in-group that has had a privilege in regards to being able to use these things, especially when they're used in a bad context. Like, you'll hear people use the word faggot as mean something bad, or gay to mean something bad, and it's like, I don't think it's bad to be those things. Why are you saying it's bad? Like, the 2000s really fucked with people's brains. Like, I don't know.
I mean, the thing is, like, the literal faggot thing was a kind of like a piece of wood for starting
A bundle of sticks.
Bundle of sticks. I mean, it's also
the word fasci means the same thing, actually. Like, fascist means the same thing as faggot.
I was gonna say, they got a bundle of sticks too, like.
Bundle of dicks.
Fascist or fascio, it means a bundle. I mean, it's also a lump of meat. It was a faggot as well, but it became a homophobic slur. I heard somewhere that the reason that it was used as a homophobic slur was because something they used to burn gay men at the
they
stake
used to burn them in faggots. Like, that's how they burnt witches and everything. Those burning things were also like historically always called faggots by the English and a few other groups.
Yeah.
That's
where it came from.
Because I think, if I remember rightly, fagot is the German version of fasci. Fasci is like the Latin.
Yeah,
might be wrong.
I think not. I think you're right. I think because fasces or fasces, as the ecclesiastical language, we call it fasces, but the Latin spoken by Romans would be fasces, Fasces.
Yeah, they used hard
bundle.
C's.
Yeah, it means a bundle of rods with an axe, because they strengthened through by being a kind of collective, and like a phalanx was another word.
To be fair, being involved with fellow people of the LGBTQ community has made me quite strong at crushing fascists. It's gonna be the fight out. It'll be it's gonna be us versus the fascists, and we're gonna win. But yeah, no, it's just like interesting bits of etymology. But like the way that these things develop into slurs is because of the way they're assigned to people. And the way they're used to denigrate specific types of types of being, types of existence.
Yeah. And there's another thing that's kind of a racial insinuation or innuendo, I guess would be the word for it. That like a lot of Latino people hear from the typical fucking racist white people. Fucking in regards to like grapes and shit, like go pick some grapes, that type of shit. Like, yeah, shit's real fucking annoying too.
We get the one over here, the Irish in Britain. It's like, oh, you can't be Irish, because I was born in England. It's like, oh, you're not Irish, and then it's like, you can't be Irish, you don't drink. It's like, fuck you, fuck you royally, you cunt. Because a lot of people over there don't drink, and a lot of Irish diaspora people don't drink particularly. I mean, the Brits will. I've never seen anyone like the Brits for drinking, binge drinking. And it's violent binge drinking. It's just, I mean, British tourists are notorious abroad. Go across to like Ibiza in Spain. They're absolutely infamous. British soccer fans, they're notorious. They're on the rampage, binge drinking and violence. It's all the time. I mean, that's not fair for people from England and the UK that are not bad people and they don't binge drink like that as well, because it's not fair to sweepingly generalize, but just to say there's an awful lot of this binge drinking culture in the UK. It's way worse.
Oh yeah, I think we're like second to Germany when it comes to like drinking in West Europe.
Yeah.
Germany's worse. Like, they're actually a lot worse. But the what's it? So what I find kind of interesting about like colonial culture, because we see people doing this with the Palestinian diaspora, they'll try and like disconnect them from being Palestinian. They're just Arabs. They're just Arabs about in Syria or in like fucking Iraq, or they're in Europe, or they're etc. America, and so they try and disconnect them from their homeland. They do that to Irish folk. Like, my family came over during the Great Famine, and like because they moved into the Midlands after World War II. Well, you're no longer in Liverpool where you can be openly Irish and still be kind of okay. Yeah. They were in the Midlands, and that caused the genocide of my family's culture. And there'll be some snobby cunt, some middle-class wanker in fucking Dublin They'll turn around and tell you that means that I'm no longer Irish and I'm just some Angloid. That I'm no longer Scottish. My great grandfather was a proud Scotsman. You know, like
I have an Irish passport because both my parents are Irish, and I spent a lot of my childhood over there, which is why my accent's a bit Irish as well. I still get it, but you're born in England. You're not Irish. You're not. Of course, if I became a celebrity, or if I won a gold medal for the Irish Republic in some sports event, I'd be a born and bred and buttered Irishman, and they knew me as a child, and they went to school with me as a child in their village. And I was, you know, but then the minute you upset them, oh, you're English, bastard English. It's yeah. There's Britain and Ireland as well, because Ireland unfortunately still has West Britery all over it. But in Britain, it's entirely geographical reductionist. That's not something you get in the States, which is why the Brits are always telling people who are Irish Americans, for example, genuine ones, not just the fake ones whose dad worked in a factory with an Irishman. I'm talking about actual Irish, usually in places like South Boston or whatever. And they are Irish Americans, but the Brits go, they can't be Irish, they're just Americans because they're entirely.
Arguably, they have turned into Brits. Like,
that's debate. That's but I mean, in Britain, it's very much if you're born in a stable, you're a horse. That's it.
Yeah,
you're born in a cowshed, you're a cow. That's the end of it. No, but I'm not though. But you're born there. That's what you are.
Yeah, like.
I was born in a town that I never lived in, but I was born in it because they were registered with the doctors. That was the local hospital to where my parents were registered. That's where you're from. I've never lived there. You're born there. That's where you're from. No,
the attacks on Palestinian culture like manifest in so many different ways, whether it's directly and violently or like some type of indirect way. You know, it's like it's kind of annoying that some people seem to have trouble pointing this shit out. Like I remember like it was just a month ago. You know, there was some random mecha Nazi Pat Sock type of dude who was like trying to downplay like the imperialist actions of Trump and how like he was no ally, no friend to the Palestinian people whatsoever. You know, pointing out because I pointed out how like, you know, when he officially recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, you know, and he was like, oh, that's just a bullshit gesture. It doesn't change anything materially. It's like, you really think nothing changed materially from that, really? And then this fucking dude has the gall to fucking put a Palestinian flag in his fucking name now, pretending like he actually gives a shit or ever gave a shit about the Palestinian people. Like, it's very clear that the attack on culture from that Al-Aqsa mosque raid, that was very much a clear, open indication that they are trying to get rid of any type of fucking culture or any type of tradition that's going on there. They destroyed fucking one of the oldest churches, like, ever fucking known. Like, and I even saw in Jordan earlier today, apparently they trying to stop their own Palestinian refugees that are within their borders from like crossing over. That's like, wow, so they can't even leave? Like, are they your prisoners now? Like, yeah, fucking compradors.
Fucking puppets. Yeah. Yeah, that's what they have. I mean, they partition the entire region and then make it put all these little puppet regimes in power. I mean, they did that in Eastern Europe, in the Balkans, in the 1990s, and the term is now coined that Balkanization. Split the country up and put little compradors and puppets in power there, and there you have it. You know, Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia, and what else we got? Montenegro now as well. They're all basically just anti-Serbian puppet regimes, because Serbia was the bad guy back then, you know. But that's colonialism and that's imperialism. You know?
I mean, well, even with some of the problems that existed with Serbia, it certainly didn't justify the U.S. invasion.
Not in the slightest.
And then there's like also everyone ignores Albania in like this situation. Yeah. Albania was also affected by the Balkanization situation, especially with what like the what was going on with Kosovo. Yeah. Kosovo is an Albanian region. Like, it's not part of Albania, and like it's arguable as to whether like it should be or not. That's an argument to be had. But like, it's full of Albanian people, and like basically there was like this whole contestment that was going on at the period. Actually, it was going on from like most of the Cold War, and it was used as an exploitation point in the war. It's like the Kosovo genocide is like one of the biggest like events in the whole like Balkan situation. what was that, like 1996 to like 1999 or something like that?
99, 96 wasn't. It was more 99. Really.
Oh, it started in like 96, 97 because I was born when it was still happening in 98.
Oh,
They were bombing
yeah.
Kosovo when I was born.
It came to a head in 99. It was 98, 99. I remember it. I remember Bosnia 1991, 92. I remember all that, thinking, what the fuck is going on here? It was difficult.
I mean, Bosnia did some fuck shit with the alliances they had with the West, but they didn't deserve the response they got for it. Like
Bosnia, this is what reminded me of Ukraine. Now it's like it's eerily similar. It's basically two sides of fascists killing each other and empires trying to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
Basically. And that's what Bosnia was. I mean,
classical imperialist conflict where they just use their puppets to do their bidding for them.
I mean, I was initially sympathetic because the way the Serbs were demonized. I mean, they used to say Serb, Serb. It's like the way Nazis use the word Jew. They say not like Jewish folk or Jews. They go the Jew. You know, they use it in such a nasty, aggressive way. And the word Serb was like a 4-letter obscenity. They Serb bombers, Serb, Serb. Bosnian Muslims were murdered by Serbs. And it was like, and I used to think, well, maybe the Serbs aren't so bad. Well, the Serbs themselves aren't so bad, but the Serbian fascists were. And the Serbian government and the Bosnian Serb government, they were bloody Chetnik fascist warlords. But the Croatian side were neo-Ustashi. The Ustashi, the Croatian puppet regime of the Nazis in World War II and the fascist Italians. And it was the same sort of shit going on about that, glorifying people like Ante Pavelic, the leader of the Ustashi, I think, much like they're glorifying Stepan Bandera in Ukraine. And on the other side, you've got the fucking Russian neo-Tsarism trying to say that, Ukraine's not a real country and blah, blah, blah. Again, it's inter-imperialist. It was like going back to the good old days when Serbia was great and we had a king and we want to restore the king of Yugoslavia. Or the other one wanted to go and restore the independent state of Croatia with its fascist Ustashi government. It was like that, and it was just like, what the fuck? There's all these civilians getting massacred and butchered by these fascist warlords on each side. The Bosnian side, you had these kind of like fascist and Wahhabist bloody fanatics getting involved in that as well, and it was like, this is madness.
And then the Serbians would just go on like racist tirades about Muslims for fucking ages.
So fucking terrible. Yeah, I mean,
there's like so much Serbian music from that era that is just loaded with racism for like on like ethno nationalism.
I mean, lots of Serbs were very uncomfortable with this. I mean, Serbia does have a strong left-wing tradition, actually. Probably more so. It's less westernized than Croatia, but Croatia's got a lot of... There's left-wing people in all of those countries, and they hate this jingoistic shit. All of them did. And I talked to them on social media, Facebook mainly, and they used to say it's something... They hated it. They said, you'll get some that say, oh, don't trust the Croats, and don't trust the Serbs, and don't... And it's like, fuck off. Others will just say, we have neighbors and we have in-laws in our family who were Croats and Serbs, depending on which one they were. And it was like, and those are the people I give a shit about, not these fucking hooray Henry bloody warlords. And it's the same with Russia, Ukraine. There's Ukrainians and Russians all getting on quite well, and Poles and Roma as well. But no, these fucking wannabe Cossacks and these fucking wannabe Banderite cunts coming in there massacring people for speaking the wrong language or having the wrong colour eyes. It's heartbreaking. And then again, back to the colonialism with Palestine. You speak the wrong language, you wear the wrong clothing, and you don't, you're locked away and you're cordoned off. That's the nature of imperialism, Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent, but yeah.
Yeah, and I noticed that it really pissed me off too, because it was one of my favorite basketball players growing up as a kid.
Oh, Vlade Divac.
Yeah, Amari Stoudemire used to play for the Phoenix Suns. He came out on Twitter condemning BLM and the black community in general for standing in solidarity with Palestine. He was an NBA player for the Phoenix Suns.
I thought you were going to say Vlade Divac. He was a Serbian guy who's a.
Oh no.
No.
I want to see how the Celtic Football Club's going to respond to this current change. Because last year, when the bombing happened, I think it was another tower block. Is either another tower block or is a hospital? They came out and like changed all the chairs of their football stadium into Palestinian flags.
Yeah,
and they got in trouble with the UEFA for it.
Yeah, it's shit like it fucking pissed me off though, because it's like, why is this guy like condemning his community for standing with people that are oppressed. Like it's obvious, it should be obvious to him why people are standing up for Palestine. Like you have the same type of feeling, the treatment that you're getting, you know, like with any type of oppression that the black community is facing.
He's basically licked too many boots to get where he is, and he's not going to change it now. So he's got to lick the masses' boots, hasn't he?
I think people forget that America, like, even though it's not legally an apartheid country, it's still a country that functions off the basis of apartheid. It's not like Israel or Saudi Arabia in the sense that like there is a legal function directly in law that states this, this, and this. But spiritually, it's an apartheid country. So like. And we get this with white Americans. White Americans will do this when you point out like the oppression of black people. They go, yeah, but there's poor white people and stuff like that. Yeah, and they have privileges that black people don't. So like, you know, mute. Like we're talking about racial oppression here, which does involve class oppression, but not in the way they do it. They use the white working class as a shining sight to squash people down, and people do this with Israel. People will be like, oh, you know, they shouldn't have caused harm against the Israeli people. You know, there's workers there and stuff. Yeah. Who benefit off the blood of Palestinians. And if they can't accept that, they're never going to, if they really don't like what Israel does and they can't accept that they benefit from it, they're never going to end it. None of them are going to ever uprise in solidarity with Palestine if they can't accept that they're benefactors of Palestinian fucking suffering.
Yeah.
You have, I mean, there is an Israeli working class, obviously the US white working class as well. And but the thing is, they need to come out and they need to break with the fucking US establishment, Israeli establishment, and come out and support with their non-white friends, neighbors, and comrades. That's the only way it'll ever. You can't change the system from within and join the system because you know it's our system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's like
you have to break with whiteness and become a human being, basically. You know.
Another thing that really pissed me off about the I'll go for it.
I was just gonna say something in the chat. Someone was saying that like that Israel, like the origins of it was the Reinhard Heydrich of the SS proposing that European Jews return to Palestine. It's not the origins of it per se, but it is the modern like the neo origins. You want to say the modern origins, like the actual origins, is like Herschel in the 1800s. He came up with the idea of a need for a Jewish homeland, and Palestine was made a target. That's why the British came up with a decree in, I think it's either 1911 or 1917 or 18. They come up with a decree that was like, we're going to send Jews from here to Palestine. And it was basically a measure of trying to make a white settler state. They didn't want them to form a separate Israel. They just wanted them to be like white people that were there that had influences with Europe. It kind of backfired them in the 40s when the Americans were arming them to fight against the British. But the what's it? Yeah. Then what? Like the modern way that we conceive Israel does connect to fucking Heydrich.
Yeah, Heydrich. Yes, he was. Yeah, an evil motherfucker, but he was taken down by some Czech exiles with the help of the British Secret Service or whatever they were.
Yeah.
In 1941.
And, like on the destruction of like national culture point, you know, especially that's why another thing why that Mark Stoudemire thing really pissed me off too, when he was like trying to condemn fucking black people for, you know, being empathetic to the Palestinian struggle. And it almost felt so bad where it was like I almost felt attacked in the Latino community too, because it's like, do we not understand the cultural fucking attacks that the United States has been doing to Native people or any type of Latino type of people as well? Like, there's all types of cultural destruction in the U.S. of these types of cultures and shit. I mean, people seem to not really bring it up very often, but especially in the Southwest, Latino people were segregated as well, away from the white people. My grandma was forced to go to fucking school in a damn basement. All the black people and Latino people were in the fucking basement. And I went to that same high school, by the way. They didn't really change anything about that. They obviously couldn't be segregated anymore. But I did go to the same fucking school that my grandma went to. And I fucking went to class in the same building where she fucking used to have to be forced to go to school in the basement of that shit. When my fucking, you know, she participated in the Delano grape strikes in 1965 that lasted up to like the early 1970s and shit. A couple years later, my mom was born in 1973. And then all throughout her life, when she was in school, he used to beat the shit out of her in school for speaking Spanish.
Your mom was born in 1973?
Yeah, my mom was born in 1973.
God, your mother is younger than me. Oh, shit.
Yeah, so you
Hell.
can see like how recent this shit still is. Like when she was in school, both in elementary school and middle school, they kind of started to stop doing it in high school because when you're in high school, you start fighting back. But in elementary school and middle school, they used to beat the shit out of her with a ruler whenever she would speak Spanish to get her to speak English.
Jesus Christ.
And it was to the point where she was basically like terrified to even speak Spanish. That's why like growing up, when I was growing up, I didn't really learn Spanish. Because she was scared. She understood it perfectly. Like when my grandma talks Spanish to my mom, she understands it perfectly. But she doesn't. She replies in English because it's just like a mental thing, which is like she's terrified to speak Spanish. So I never learned Spanish. So that's 2 generations away from my grandma, and already like the Spanish language is already out. It's like I need to have to go fucking learn Spanish from Rosetta Stone or some shit now. Like,
my parents left Ireland and they forgot all their Irish, and I had to learn it in my spare time, and I still can't barely speak it. But I try and use it in my everyday language and think in it if I can. You know what I mean? But it's difficult because no one around you speaks it, and there's a general attitude, more so in England, but even to some extent in the Irish Free State of, what's the point? No one uses it. No one speaks it except it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's out of date. Kind of like self-loathing thing, Or you'll get that a lot.
Yeah,
Well, you'll get that over there. Speak English because we don't want to speak. Well, I mean, Spanish is a colonial language anyway, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I feel like that's very much a thing that's still going on in Palestine too. Is like any type of like show of their national culture or anything like that is heavily fucking brutalized and fucking attacked by the Israeli state.
Yeah. All right.
Well,
They kind of
Israeli state does it on themselves as well. They discriminate against people speaking Yiddish and all that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's like Yiddish has been like fucking massive amongst the working class. Like Lenin criticized the Bund for this. Like it was like 1912, I think. He criticized the Bund because the Bund was trying to like move to using Hebrew. Hebrew had been like rediscovered like about 100 years ago, maybe less. It still existed kind of, but it was essentially a dead language, and it was like Cornish, it had a revival. And it didn't really uptake amongst the proletariat. Proletariat weren't even really interested. It was more of a petty bourgeois and bourgeois thing to speak Hebrew instead of Yiddish. And they wanted to change the language to Hebrew. Now, it was like 70 or 80% of the Bundes organization, the party, couldn't speak Hebrew. They couldn't understand Hebrew. They couldn't communicate it. And so Lenin slammed them for it. It's like, yo, you're just like fucking forcing on this like very bourgeois thing onto a cult, like a organization loaded with proletarians that only speak Yiddish, and like Yiddish is like something that has a core element with their culture that just Hebrew technically doesn't. Historically, Hebrew has a connection to their culture, but here now in this year of 1912, and here and now in this year of 2023 as well, Yiddish has more of a cultural involvement with the Jewish proletariat in Europe and in Israel than fucking Hebrew ever will. It's Hebrew has just been constantly tied with privilege and the bourgeoisie. Hopefully it gets reclaimed. I'm not saying that they should never speak Hebrew, but like with the way it's used today, it is used as a way to culturally genocide the Jewish people of Yiddish. It should never be Hebrew over Yiddish. It should be Hebrew and Yiddish in unison, being respected as languages and like taught to people, and that the primary language that they communicate to each other in should be the one that most of them speak. Like not a small population of them. If you're gonna make a union of the Jewish people, you federate that, or anyway like make this connective diaspora. Well, if they're gonna speak to each other, let's say 80% of diaspora speak Yiddish. You're going to have the main language that everyone communicates as Yiddish. You would hopefully have everyone learn other languages and have like this come up an intercultural interaction, but you're still going to be like, well, primarily the culture of this union is Yiddish, and Hebrew is not like an oppressed group, so it's not like it needs any special fucking like privileges or anything. It should just be respected as a language that has long died and been revived, and as a revived language can be reclaimed by the Jewish people. And one of the major reclaimants for it is for religious practices. That's where it's like mostly used by a lot of Jewish people. Otherwise, they give a shit. It's like fuck it. It would be like the fucking Italian Communist Party going, do you know what, guys? Like, I know we speak Italian, but we're gonna speak Latin. Which is just completely benign. I'm using a bit of an absurdist example, but it really isn't that far-fetched from that. It'd be like it's like the English Northern Party. Like, there's some people in there that want to like return to Old English. Fuck off. No one in the country speaks it. Like, fucking good luck trying to get people to understand that Dutch-sounding weird shit. Like,
I kind of like the idea of speaking a bit of Old English, you know, instead of bloody plummy-mouthed fucking Queen's English.
I mean, what is it? We can, you know, like Yorkshire English though was the original form of modern English, and it's so much different than Queen's English. I think we should restore Yorkshire English as the standard. Because that's where they got modern English from. They stole it from the Yorkshire. And it happened with Middle English too. Middle English was like developed by Yorkshire linguists, and then like the South stole it, changed it, and just it's completely different to the original formation. Same with modern English.
Aye. I mean, the Geordie dialect where I am, this is so far to the north they call Yorkshire people Southerners.
Fucking bastards! I've got a bit of Yorkshire in me. I feel offended.
That's when I've met assholes from Yorkshire who were like conservative types.
Oh my god, calling them a Southerner is gonna make them have an explosion.
I had a few of them telling me, get a fucking job, you fucking scum. I said, shut your face, you fucking Southerner. And they turned around and went, oh, from Yorkshire, you twat. I went south of fucking Durham, mate. Fucking Southerner. Oh, that's like red rag to a bull. Red rag to a bull.
Oh, that's like calling someone from Cymraeg English. You have just started a war.
It's like calling, I'm trying to think of a US equivalent, calling somebody, I suppose if somebody's a proud redneck from the south, not a peckerwood, but
yeah, like an actual redneck, a commie, like
redneck, and probably call it because they come a few miles north of somebody else. They call them Yankees or something. I suppose it's a bit like that.
What's it? It'd be like calling fucking Africans just Americans, like.
Or
oh wow.
Yeah, I mean, some Mexicans don't like being called North American because they say it makes them look like gringos or something.
Yeah, it's like, fuck that gringo shit, like... like, the term America is just, like, cancerous. It's like, and it's like, it's that sort of, like, cutting off point where you're just, like, you're ignoring the culture of a person and just completely obliterating past it. It's the same with, like, just saying, oh, Palestinians, they're just Arabs, guys. That, you know, they're Palestinians. They have a national cultural liberation movement going on. You can't just like disconnect the diaspora and go, oh, they're just Arabs. You can't they can't go home. Yes, they can. They kind of come from a cultural place. They can go home. It's like people saying that about Irish people. You can't go back to Ireland. Well, yeah, I fucking can. And like, as soon as I start talking too much about Ireland, you'll tell me to. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was just laughing. Go for it.
Oh, but yeah, it's like these absurdisms. They can go from like the tiniest little petty thing, to like mass swaths of it. Like, you know, Palestine is considered to be just an Arab country. There's Arabs, there's Christians, there's Jews, there's atheists. There's all sorts of people there. Like, fucking all Hamas are fucking Muslims, so that means everyone there's Muslim. The PFLP, they're all. Everyone in the PFLP are now Muslims, regardless of the fact it's a communist organization and probably has a lot of atheists in it.
There's Armenians
like,
in the West Bank as well.
And Assyrians.
Yeah.
Speaking of the West Bank, I just a few hours ago, it said that Israeli military storms parts of the West Bank. So.
This same kind of reducing people to religion. I mean, the term Fenian, which is the name I use, Red Fenian punk here. The Fenian was used by loyalists to say that all the Catholics were members of this Fenian group, who were a rebel group, mostly based in the US, actually. And the Fenians were like an early version of republicanism. So, but the term was used meaning the Catholic savage. Gaelic-speaking savages or Fenians, and you dirty Fenian bastard. And
very quickly spread as well because of this, and like the communists were like called Fenians in the 1800s.
Oh yeah. I mean, Fenian was used as a slur. I think it was somebody else's. It was on Discord. It was somebody else's Discord server. I think it might have been you, Gopniks. I think I joined one.
Was you getting told off for having Fenian in your name?
Not by you, Gopnik. I hasten to add. I'm no axe to grind with it, but I think it was somebody in his. I think it was somebody in his Discord server said, "I think you might want to change your name." And I said, "Sorry, you're talking to me?" I said, yeah. Well, that is a race. That is a slur against Irish Catholics, isn't it? I went, well, actually. It's I am of that demographic, and it's a term that was used meaning an Irish rebel, and it was later used as a slur, as I've just described.
But also it was massively reclaimed. Like the way it was used in the 1800s was by like the communists actively called themselves Fenians, and they were like fucking revolutionaries. So it's like you would think a fucking communist would look into these things. It's like they're looking into Ireland is from like the 60s. They missed James Connolly. They missed the fucking 1800s. They missed the late 1700s. They're just like, we should just look at like the Marxist history, and what they think the Marxist history is the PIRA, not we were one of the first organizations in the fucking First International. We were there at the first meeting of the First International. Like, it's ridiculous.
To be fair, I don't know if that person was a communist. I can't even remember who it was. I think it was.
It's you Gopnik server. Who knows what weird fucking fascists and social fascists are in there? The guy's positions are wonky. I don't trust you, Gopnik.
I mean, I've never had any run-ins with him. I've always found him okay because he used to go on to Paul from Marxism Today's live streams quite often. They did a lot of
but like that's been like that's like with earlier Paul, he like got caught up in with like even after he turned into a Maoist, he got caught up in with people like Hakim and Ugopnik. And you know what? Sometimes it's not wrong working with them. Like, if they actually decided to do something on Palestine and work together on that, fine. I couldn't even give a shit that Hakim's a revisionist. But I guarantee if you ask Paul now about Hakim, he'd call Hakim a revisionist. And I don't know what you would call Ugopnik. Like, he's just like not even a very like grounded in principle kind of guy when it comes to Marxist theory. He's just kind of...
He's more of like a memer, like a left-wing memer.
Yeah,
Maybe.
He's kind of like Danov, but like less acceptable.
I found him amiable enough, but I've not interacted with him that much.
I mean, like, what I used to like Hakim, and you know what, like, interacting with him, he's pretty polite, he's lovely to speak to, like, he'll respond to your messages, he's not a prick, but, like, he is a revisionist, and, like, that's what really pissed me off with him, because he started, like, doing this, like, shit where it's like, oh, you can't call China not a socialist country, you can't call it a fucking revisionist or, like, a capitalist country. Because
I never thought of Hakim as revisionist, but I mean, maybe he's like...
He's a Dengist.
Oh, yeah.
He's a Dengist. He's just, like, really good at not seeming like a Dengist because he actually knows his Marxist-Leninist theory.
Yeah, he certainly does that.
Yeah, like, his thing on China is he says that, like, they're doing, like, a two-line struggle, and, like, there's actual genuine Maoists, like, in the...
That's not how two-line struggle works. Oh, my God. Two-line struggle is that you're supposed to, eliminate the fucking... one splits into two, and you're supposed to, like, fucking find the pathway to the left position over the right position, because, like, it splits into the rightists and the leftists, and we're the leftists, so we fight against the rightists. That's, like, where two line ends up coming in.
Bro.
It's not that you then go along with the right-wing path.
Yeah.
Like, that... I mean, you could say it's two-line struggle from a fascist perspective. But, like, from the Maoist perspective, like, that's us having lost the two-line struggle, and whatever we're doing in opposition, it barely exists. Where's the Maoist, like, oppositional struggle to eliminate the right-wing line? Oh, wait, no, because the right-wing line eliminated it, because two-line struggle is not a state of permanence. You get this MZT types all the time. Two-line struggle is not a state of permanence. It is, like, in the progenesis of revisionism and other problems like that, and on critical issues, you end up getting a right and a left deviation. There's the center, which is just people in between. They're not a specific position. They're just in between, and you got to, like, attract those people. But, like, the left has to combat the right. It's about the left line destroying the right line. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a similar concept that Stalin talked about, but it's from a completely different, like, way of wording it. I can't remember what it's called. But it's basically, like, common Marxist shit, like, and, like, using that as an excuse is bollocks. But yeah, like, so with Palestine as well, like, we got to get into like influencers. So like what we've seen is that like all these white influencers that claim to be like a part of like like they support liberation struggles. They're all about the people. They want freedom and all that. End up betraying their shit. I'm gonna start with one of the funniest and one of the most pathetic, and that's gonna be Keffals, because so when they were debating Wanky Spanky, now this is on topic. Don't worry, I'm not drifting off again. She said she was Irish at one point, if I remember rightly, and. Yeah, she said she was Irish. When she moved back into Ireland, she said she was Irish. Now, she probably is of both Irish and Italian descent, but when people were criticizing her for having a position that was quite juxtaposed to the region she was living in on, like, Palestinian issues, and quite juxtaposed to her supposed positions as a socialist, she then went, "I'm Italian," as a response. Irish when she wants to be, Italian when she wants to be. Fuck, she sounds like one of those weird English people that just fucking claim they're everything that they're not. Like, I'm fucking German and I'm fucking Scandinavian and
I've been accused of being one of those by Irish middle-class relatives, and I say, yeah, I'll fucking fight you for it. These Irish middle-class relatives of mine, they're not necessarily, they're distant relatives, and they got very Scottish and English names. Again, the Irish middle class are all like that. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent now. But yeah, fuck them. Sorry, that's a bit of a bugbear of mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think we're having a watching party on people on Facebook are talking to me as I'm typing as I'm talking on here, saying I think there's more and more people tuning into this. Yeah.
Yeah. Also with like the Hakeem thing, it pisses me off even more so too. Was he had a video in recent months on revisionism,
right.
in the USSR, and he started that at Gorbachev. Like, why is he starting at Gorbachev and not at Khrushchev? They're very sus.
Khrushchev was the first revisionist, really.
Yeah. But it's again, it just comes down to a thing where he just rejects the idea of Soviet social imperialism, which I have noticed a lot of Brezhnevites doing that, and pretending to call themselves ARMLs, but they're not.
It was something that came up with a comrade when I was involved in a certain cult that turned out to be very revisionist in the UK. Cara, you know who I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was involved with them. Well, yeah, revolutionary communist group, fucking cult in the UK, and one of the guys who was also involved was a guy from New York actually, but he was of Indian heritage, and he was the first person I remember hearing thinking that he mentioned something about social imperialism of the Soviet Union, and that was basically poo-pooed by these RCG fuckers. And I remember thinking, interesting, because Afghanistan, for example, was the country. They said, "Oh no, that wasn't imperialist at all. No." And I remember thinking, well, I don't know.
They should really look back at how the Soviet Union wavered back and forth constantly on Palestine. I mean, we're talking about now today with like Russia and China doing their fucking imperialist peace, how they're trying to do this two-state solution, bringing the peace shit with Israel, which literally just keeps on the existence of Israel, justifies them.
I'll
go for it.
Ceasefire. They're just calling for a ceasefire. In this sense, not even.
Yeah, they're calling for a fucking like they're just saying like, hey, stop shooting at Israel. The IDF are totally justified in doing this shit. And it's like it's very similar to like how fucking the Soviet Union was handling like the Fatah party and shit. Like they were doing the same shit. They were trying to call for peace deals between Israel. It's the same fucking shit.
Rings a bell actually. Yeah. I'm actually old enough to remember the Soviet Union in its later stages. So.
You poor soul.
Well, I wasn't born in its early stages. I mean, I'm not that bloody old. I'll be 52 next month. So, but yeah, I'm not.
You were born in the decade where everything went to real shit, the 60s.
Not quite. No, the early 70s.
Oh, early 70s. Are you 71?
71. I was born in November 1971. So yeah.
I see.
That's when things were starting to get even worse. That's when the 70s was actually when the USSR and the US were like buddies, kind of. It's weird. During the 60s and the 70s, Khrushchev used to go and like sit in the garden of like the fucking the White House and all that, and used to go fucking like spend time with his American buddies before he got before he fucking got ousted.
I mean, I remember the first president. First Soviet premier. I remember was Brezhnev. He was still in power when I was a little kid. He died I think he died in 1980. Then Andropov, he was there. He was only there for a very short space of time. Died. Then it was Konstantin Chernenko.
Oh yeah, like everyone thinks Andropov was going to save the Soviet Union, even though he was like a Brezhnevite. He was like the guy who like pushed for Brezhnev to be the next heir to the fucking Soviet Empire.
Yeah.
And behind the Afghanistan war as well.
I mean, I'll still support and I'll defend the Soviet Union, but I'll give it critical. Well, it's gone. There's nothing left to support. It's critical. I will be critical of it nonetheless.
The thing is it kind of technically was gone when it 1957 happened.
Yeah.
It basically there was a chance for the Soviet people to struggle back and take over, and they didn't. And so by the mid '60s, it just became a different country.
Pretty much. I mean, it says a lot that at the end of it, people weren't prepared to fight for it, and they were sick of it, and they were glad to see it go. It was only later on they wanted it back because they realized what replaced it was even worse.
Because it became the Russian Empire. They were even making Roman statues of Soviet soldiers where they were in Roman armor and fucking swords and stuff.
Yeah, it was. It's a problem.
Was
you see,
it
because
Greek?
Yeah.
I think it might have been
these
Greek.
old empires are the one. It's what sets the standards. That's why they need cultural revolutions. And China.
The aesthetic types are always obsessed with the Roman statues and all that.
Yeah.
But I'm not real into that. Yeah.
I don't mind classical statues, but you gotta have something else as well. You can't just define everything by that. You got to define against it as much as in line with it. You've got to just you got to contrast things against it. I mean, they started tearing down statues of slavers in the UK. I wouldn't have thrown him into the river. I would have put him into the museum and say, "This is a bastard you don't want to glorify. They should have a corridor of shame for these toppled statues and say, that's the fucker that did that. That's the bastard that did that, and that's the motherfucker that murdered those millions of people. Don't be them. This is the person we should be." But they threw him in the river. I mean, fair enough. I'm not going to complain. But that's the point. Can't get away from classicalism because of Rome. There was never a cultural revolution in the Soviet Union that there was in China. I mean, China, it's not.
Well, there was, but the Cultural Revolution in the Soviet Union was very stunted. It didn't achieve its goals, but it did happen. It started in, I think it was the late 20s. It failed, unfortunately, because while it had major successes, but bourgeois culture in the Soviet Union actually still prevailed after their Cultural Revolution.
Yes.
They actually ramped it up as well in the second 5-year plan, up to 1938, 39. They ramped it up there too, but World War II and all that shit happened, and then they brought back the fucking church, with pretty much rolled back a lot of that shit.
Oh god, banning abortion, banning homosexuality. I mean,
revisionism in the Soviet Union was really a problem by World War II. So everyone goes on about the 50s. The 50s was the outcome. The fact that the church came back, the fact that the Cultural Revolution was rolled back, the fact that so much work the proletariat had put into developing their society had been stomped on, was a rise of revisionism. But we are getting off topic. So with Careful's literally calling for support for Israel, essentially, shitting on everyone who supports Palestinians as either A, supporting Hamas, and B, condescending to Palestinians that otherwise don't support X, Y, or Z. And it's okay, well, what about the millions of Palestinians that do support the Intifada? Because this is the thing I haven't gotten into yet as well. It's not just Hamas, it's an Intifada. Intifada means a unified struggle. It's it's a fucking revolutionary movement. It's jihad. And so it's a movement of the peoples against the Israeli occupied state. And that's it. I don't even know what Vosh has said, and I couldn't give a shit, but it's probably something stupid. We've had Cornel West talk his fucking stupid shit, and where he talks for this middle ground liberal stuff. Jimmy Dore has literally avoided the Israel situation like a fucking hot fucking fiery pan.
Cornel West.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, I mean, you can add Cornel West in that category with Kefals and all that as well. Yeah,
and what's it? We see this with so many influences. The governments of Britain, America, France, they are coming out to ban any struggle against the the Israeli oppressors any protest for a push against this. I don't think they know. Like I don't think the French government know the French. It seems. You're not gonna fucking stop them from struggling by banning a fucking protest. Like, if anyone in Europe needs to be looking at, like, if anyone in West Europe needs to look at any group in West Europe, it's the fucking French. Because I'll give them that. They got struggle culture down to a T. Like,
French proletariat, I have they've got a good...
So much respect for them. I mean, there's some white supremacy issues. It's not all fucking Guns N' Roses, but, like...
France is terrible, but it's at least there's a left. There is a left there. Britain has no left.
It's not being organised by the communists, though. It'd be the anarchists that's organising that, because the communists...
They're more hands-on, but they just lack the theory a lot of it.
Well, the French Communist Party themselves, like, turned around and was like, this violence needs to stop so we can return to, like, normality, and they wanted to ban social media usage and block all of it until all the struggles were over.
Yeah.
That's my answer to them.
Dissemination. I mean, the bourgeoisie have realized how, like fucking advanced social media has made struggle. Black Lives Matter has shoved that into their face. Because, like, one of the things that helped the foment of Black Lives Matter isn't just that everyone was off work, though that was a big part of it. It's the social media aspect. Like, people have not been using social media hard enough to push for struggle. The Walk on Wall Street was like this as well. Like, a lot of it spread around because social media is a lot better than letters and newspapers for getting information to people, if they have the devices for it, that is.
Yeah.
It's actually, like, one of the reasons why you could say that, like, it's not just that people were at work that they didn't get to go to Wall Street. There were proletarians there. There were poor people that were there. It's that a lot of them, like, we're talking, like, 2008 to 2014, a lot of them couldn't afford, like, your fancy smartphones or your fucking computers to get onto, like, this and that social media site to get involved with a lot of these things. And so they would have joined later when they found out about the struggle after it started. Because, you know, a lot of these groups weren't sending out flyers. That's why I think the communist org should be doing both. We should be doing the old school shit and the new school shit, because there's an intermediary. It's a lot smaller now because, like, tech has gotten more affordable per se. But it's still a problem. Like, if you go one way or the other, you basically miss out large swaths of people. If you go for just newspapers and flyers, well, they ain't gonna reach a lot of, like, middle class people. But if you go with just, like, internet stuff, you're going to reach, like, the upper sector of the working class based on the time they have to engage with it and the accessibility to devices they have, and the middle class, and you're going to miss out on the lumpen proletariat and the lower proletariat. Diversity and how we attain towards struggle, but there needs to be protests, there needs to be riots. We need strikes. Strikes are so important for this. Like, fuck what the union rep says. Organize your own fucking union if they ain't letting you do it. Like, we need strikes so damn bad right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the European countries know that shit. And that's why they're trying to crack down on that shit, too. They're trying to crack down on solidarity strikes and shit.
Yeah.
There was a big one recently in New York City. I posted about it earlier in our chat. Like, thousands of people out there in New York City. Yeah,
and they got fucking, like, what was it that happened to them? The police were on them, weren't they, or something?
Yeah, it's not to the extent that it's going on in Europe, though. It's a lot worse going on in Europe right now.
Oh, yeah, water cannons in France.
Yeah.
I haven't heard what's been happening in Germany, but I know they've been having massive protests, especially from the Arab population.
The police in Rome were also using batons.
Yeah, they're beating people with batons.
Oh, that's just normal for, like, the British police in, like, Cymru and all that. In Cymru, the British police, they'll just fucking beat the shit out of people all the time. They do it in England as well. It's just, like, so much more common in Cymru. You go to, like southwest way, like Cymru, and you go, or like even into the north. You go in southwest Cymru, like, the police will fucking beat the living shit out of you.
Yeah. I come back in the room, it goes all quiet. What's happened?
I was replying to DM.
But yeah, what we see with this situation is that, like, Palestine is in a fucking catch-22 in a sense, because alone, especially without multiple fronts, at the moment there's the southern front, there isn't really a front in the north. They are fucked. Like, they're in many ways, they're fucked. They need to have this struggle. Anyone saying, oh, they shouldn't have this struggle because they'll fuck them, they were fucked without the struggle. If they have no fronts, they're fucked. The Israelis have been looking to exterminate them for ages, and Benjamin Netanyahu has explicitly said stuff like this.
Yeah.
In the fucking, decade he's been in charge. Like, he's...
And right now, yeah.
Yeah. And he's been quite explicit about this. He reworked the fucking history of the Holocaust. Did Holocaust denial, essentially, or trutherism. Trutherism would be the right way of putting it. Holocaust trutherism, and historical revisionism, to change it so that the Palestinians were the ones who come up with the Holocaust, not the Nazis. Claimed that if Hitler never involved himself with the Palestinians, that he would have not genocide any Jews, even though he was genociding Jews before he engaged with the Palestinians. But what's it? And so what we see is an extermination war that was always going to erupt. Israel kept bombing them to try and agitate them. Israel was agitating. They want a first punch so that they could claim, oh, how sorry we are, how sorry we are. What are the Palestinians supposed to do? Keep having tower blocks and hospitals get bombed because if they strike back first, the Israelis have their right to do the genocidal shit that they're already doing. They're already taking land for settlements. They're already bombing people. They're already chasing people off their land. What more do you have to do to be at war with someone? And so that
cutting off
this struggle,
cutting off water.
Yeah, and so this struggle was having to happen. It had to happen, and it's gonna happen. Regardless of they should play it safe. They're gonna lose their gains. What fucking gains, motherfucker? But what is really necessary is rather than people condescending to Palestinians about whether they should rise up for their rights or not, or whether it's good enough for them to do so, when you what the fuck do most of these people know about Gaza? Even people who are well researched on Gaza, we have limited information. It's a fucking prison. You can't get in without Israeli fucking permission, and they like to stop journalists. They like to stop people that are going to journalize this shit. The only people that really get to go in are the BBC and that one soldier dude from England. Those are the people that get to go in because they'll give you a specific way of looking at it, and they'll focus on Hamas. What's it? We need support. We need external support. Rather than fucking condescending and trying to act woo, you know what's going on with Palestine. Why don't you actually, A, learn, open-mindedness, and B, protest, struggle, riot. And the countries that can send aid, including the imperialists, should be doing it. We should be pushing for aid for Palestine and an end of Zionist oppression. It's a basic thing to just be no, get the fuck out. Not pushing them to do a two-state solution. If they go for that idea, we should see that as a betrayal and use it to foment fucking uproar in the country. You have to be... I hate the position that some Marxists have where they're you should water down your positions a bit because the fucking imperialists might accept it more. No, you give them a high bar and they go for a lower bar, and then you fucking stick to your high bar. And it can fucking it could create revolutionary struggle in this country for the first time in fucking decades. These struggles are tied in with lots of other fucking different issues regarding imperialism, including issues of the home country, and we shouldn't be ignoring it. Even if it didn't tie into those, we should be struggling for it. But the fact it ties into those means that these things have an intrinsic relationship with social movement. As members of an imperialist country, benefactors, we have a responsibility per se to struggle against what our imperialist country does. And so when we're looking at this situation, we need to struggle. The Arab countries, we need to struggle for fucking, our countries to do shit. Well, in Arab countries, what are they doing? They're struggling. They want their countries to do shit. There is massive Arab uprisings, sometimes of 2 million people struggling to get their countries to do what they need to do and help them militarily, aid-wise, fucking medical, food, fucking, sending everything they can, sending generators over there so they have electricity. These things need to get there, and someone needs to bash their way through that fucking Gaza wall to get there. Israel needs to be declared war on. That's what I would say. I'm not an Arab, so my position on what the Arab countries can do is limited. I'm not in that part of the world. I don't have that experience. But I would say that what they should do is collectively declare war on Israel. Either Israel surrenders or Israel gets crushed. Hopefully the latter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, everyone is just so, like, stuck on this, like, situation where they're either condescending to the Palestinians or they think the right option is the Palestinians have their right to rebel and I'm going to do nothing else about it. Doop, 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 doop. I'm dealing with severe health problems and I'm still looking into trying to get myself out there to go to Palestinian protests as they formalize. I'm going to try go in Birmingham because traveling to London's it's a bit awkward for a protest for me, like, unless I'm, like, got enough money to stay there, which I don't at the moment. So, like, Birmingham, which is still, like, a major city in England. At least it tells itself that all the time. And so I want to get involved in protests. Everyone else needs to be looking at this. If I, in my decrepit health, can do it, I imagine so many Americans, Anglos, Scots, Conrads, Irish, fucking Spanish, French, etc. can get involved in this. The French, shining example. Fucking follow what the French are doing. I don't know how many times I have to tell English people, maybe you should consider what the French are doing. They seem to have it down on pat. It's so fucking... Oh, no, don't compare us to the fucking French. You're not comparable. That's the point. I have more respect at the moment for the French proletariat than I ever could for the English proletariat right now. The English proletariat are a fucking joke.
I've often
Yeah,
said
French been
that.
doing their thing.
Yeah, I've often said that about France. I mean, I used to have more liking for it than I do now because it's just an imperial fucking racist fucking abortion, but abomination, not abortion. But it does have a proletarian movement there, much more strong than it has here. Over here, they're too steeped in touching the forelock to the ruling classes. Over here, it's very bourgeois. The left, the whole mindset in England is very bourgeois.
Yes, the bourgeoisification of the proletariat, as it was put in Engels' time.
Yeah. I mean, Black Red Guard made a point of saying that. He said, he was quite right. Even from over his side of him on the other side of the Atlantic, he noticed that it's very bourgeois.
The proletariat hold a very petty bourgeois relationship with the empire. Not that they are petty bourgeois; it's a consciousness thing, but like they hold that kind of relationship because we benefactor. Like what pays for society to function? Because like the whole point of capitalism, the way capitalism traditionally works, is that the working class make society run. They make everything, they do everything. That's how society runs. In imperialism, that's not how it runs. Like it is in a sense, like on an international scale, but like like the proletariat of the third world is what makes our systems run. If we didn't have them, we'd be crumbling messes like the fucking the capitalist countries were when industrialization started. Industrialization saved capitalism. It was not in a good state when it started doing that. Why does everyone think there was so many wars going on? They don't happen for no reason. Like, a whole set of conflicts were going on as the industrialization period arose. It's actually kind of the funny thing of the Americans, like, leaving the British because, they're feudalists and we're really the real capitalists. And then the British industrialize and move to the next stage of capitalism while America does agrarian semi-feudalism for fucking, was it the best part of, like, 70 years? Maybe 80?
90, but yeah.
90? Oh, fucking hell. 1776 to 1861, was it?
Yeah. Or 65, really, but yeah.
Fucking, what's it? Well, basically never if you consider all the racist shit that still exists. The Proclamation Declaration just feels like, it ended chattel slavery, but that's the best they got out of it. And it didn't necessarily end slavery proper because there was the plantation slavery that still went on until 1907 or something like that? Or was it a little later? I think it was a little later, actually.
Oh, I posted a meme like that. You were gonna laugh at.
Yeah, it is quite amusing, actually. I have to say, I laughed at that one.
But yeah, if I'm to find an image that represents what white people think decolonizers want, this is what they think that we want the Palestinians to do with their society, or we want new African people to do with their society, etc. Let me get the image. It is. I think people on this call might know what I'm about to pull out. Don't take that as a Glock joke. It was not intentional.
I might have to go and collapse soon because I'm actually starting to seriously like fall asleep.
EP
Yeah,
times.
me too.
It's like 6:34 a.m. here, and I'm trying to not sleep all day and be up all night, but I'm failing dismally with this bloody call. But never mind.
Is that not the vibe though? There we go. I found the image. So this is what like right wingers think that we want for the future. Oh, y'all can't see it. It's the one with Martin Luther King as the sun. Like,
Oh
yeah.
I just clicked on the YouTube app.
So this is what they think that like the like anti-colonists want, that we want like this is what we want the Zionists to be in the position of the pickers, and then the Palestinians to be cracking the whip. No, like it's a poor assumption best, a mischaracterization worse. Like let's look at it the way it's being presented. So they're trying to suggest that the people that have been oppressed this way for generations are gonna do these things to their oppressor. That like we're like, you know, like the Irish are so like fucking sick and twisted. They're gonna invade England, put them under plantations, and fucking steal everything that they've got and starve them to death and make them live off Walker's crisps for the rest of their lives. Like, no.
It just made me make him live off Walker's crisps.
It's like the Palestinians don't fucking want the European like settlers still there. They want them to fuck off. Like, you know,
Yeah.
not that everyone's gonna have to go on a mass exodus, but a lot of them are gonna have to fuck off. Like, they're like recent settlers and have like no bearing on the land. Why the fuck do they even deserve to stay?
Yeah.
Like, oh, what, you came here in the last 30 years? Like, because that's why most like Israeli settlers have came back over in like the last 30, 40 years. Like the 70s, 80s,
Yeah.
when like travel has become more fluid and like more people have like lower middle class and maybe even like upper working class people have been able to move there as well because of the grants and stuff Israel's been doing since it was either the late 70s or the 80s. I can't remember.
I think I'm gonna have to kind of go and collapse. By the way, because I'm starting to sort of go. My
Yeah,
brain's
me
starting to
too.
shut down.
Yeah, I'm
I-
more so just reacting at this point. Brain's not functioning right.
Yeah.
I
For the stream though, it's nice to, get all this out there and, go over what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Peace out.
Peace out.
Take care.
Take care.
Peace
Respect.
out.
Yeah, I might have to go and disappear myself now. It's this has been an absolute blast as usual. I've missed doing these live streams actually. They're actually quite
I'm
fun.
trying to like get back into it, but I've been like dealing with so much health problems that I've just been like out of it pretty bad recently.
I did have the plague recently last week. It's only a week I've tested negative of COVID, so the bastard finally caught up with me.
I'm just recovering from it.
I'm still coughing up bits of phlegm, and but I'm all right. I'm not as strong as I was 3 weeks ago, but I'm getting better. I'm getting back to my old self again.
Right.
So yeah, and there's still the usual mental health problems and stuff that keep cropping up. But hey, so yeah, I'd be nice to do more. I keep meaning to do like a bunch of us doing more live stream stuff, or just get stuff and record it onto video, and we can all put it on respective
It'd be
channels.
nice to have like well, you can download live streams as well. I can download it for you and send you the thing.
Please do if you can. Yeah. Oh, yeah, if you can do that, that'd be great.
But what's it? Yeah, no, I am hoping to like increase the ante of this. It'd be nice as well to do some like funny shit where we just like terrorize, like, having a bit of a terrorizing laugh and a joke at some of the ridiculousness that comes out of the right, just as like a way to, make people feel a bit better, like, a bit of like feel good stuff.
And we mentioned this before. I've already done my parody of Haas from Infrared. I want to do a full length version of that. because that was just a like 30-second.
Fucking, he dressed up like sex offender Batman. That was how Haas dressed up.
I kind of did that. I got my East German greatcoat, shoved it around my shoulders, and stuck a saucepan on my head with the handle sticking out the front, looking like a
dickhead.
Patriotic socialism. And it got a lot. Socialism for All responded to that with LOL because I sent it to him on his live. He was doing a live stream on Twitch, and I've got the endorsement of S4A, so I'm quite proud of that. So yeah, my merciless parody of Haas. I'd love to see Haas actually see it and kick off and go berserk and say this, calling me some kind of degenerate fag or something. But that'd be quite funny. But I think he's far too up his own arse to notice. So But I think I was hoping to do some kind of thing like, I saw that thing you did of Keffels, even though she's not our favorite person, but she made an absolute idiot. Well, rather, she let Yankee Tank.
Yeah, he made an idiot of himself.
Yeah.
She couldn't even get the things out that would have also made him look like an idiot because he was being such a fucking prick.
It was hilarious. He was there, going, yo, fire, fire, fire. He was screaming so loud, he was short. His own mic couldn't cope with the amount of shouting and noise. It was comedy gold. It was as comical as Haas with his what's that game? That right-wing video game he used the theme tune of.
Oh, the fucking Red Alert, Command and Conquer.
Playing that with his braces on, going, "Pushing the skulls of our enemies." I thought, oh, sweetie.
Fucking wearing all that leather, like fucking man's making his sacrifices for his fascist stuff. Fucking sacrificing his testicles to the leather lords. But the what's it?
I found myself, sweetie.
I don't know how anyone wears leather trousers. They just seem like, fucking what's it? They seem like a new form of an old school form of bottom surgery. That's what leather trousers seem like. They're just like a quick way to cut circulation and just be done with it.
I do own a pair of leather trousers, but they're motorcycle trousers, so
Oh yeah, they're a little different. I'm on about like the fucking tight mill fucking shit that like fucking rock stars wear.
I don't mind them. They're okay, but they are very, very.
They're sexy. Like they're cute. Like, but they just don't seem like they're designed for people to wear. Like, regardless of what giblets you got.
Yeah, there's often a bit of gay BDSM connotations going on there, I think. But
yeah, which is always a bit of fun,
Indeed, I dare say. Not into the gay side, but the BDSM side. I'm an Irish lapsed Catholic. Of course, I'm a dirty-minded bastard. It goes without saying.
I'm both pan and ace flux. So sometimes I'm ace, sometimes I'm like a pan little shit.
I'm not pansexual or bi. I'm definitely what I hate to use the word straight because that sounds just like straight laced. But you're
bent in the Roman road kind of way.
Something like that, I suppose. But I've been called a degenerate by numerous pat socks, and I wear that with pride. Yeah. Apparently you can tell just by looking at me the state of me with my terrible personal hygiene and that ridiculous hair. Apparently, I thought.
I know you could look at someone and go, yes, they have terrible personal hygiene.
Apparently you can. Yeah. The fact that I'm actually really clean, and I shouldn't say that because it doesn't go with my crust punk connotations, but I actually do actually like to be clean. But yeah, again, it's the usual accusations that you're some kind of like sexually depraved predator or something. And I have to say, I wouldn't trust any one of that fucking shower of shit in a room with a bunch of kids or drunk women.
Like usually it's like Christians accusing like fucking trans people or like fucking gay people of being pedophiles, and it's like, yeah, the Christians. You're calling people pedophiles. I think you might want to look at yourself for a fucking few minutes before you open your dirty little fucking mouth again.
Well, yeah, one of them who's been slating. She said it's a she. I think you know who I mean. Apparently said something about me dresses like a teenager. He's obviously trying to attract them, implying that means grooming them.
I mean, that's
Just
what they
really
say about
personally-
everyone who dresses punk. They say like punk is like a teenage thing, and it's like no, it's not. Like the people that started
origin-
punk were in their like 20s. Like it's not even.
They were at the
thing.
time. They're in their 60s, and some of them are in their 70s now.
Yeah, it's times changed, but yeah, like the punk movement was like it was like there were teenagers, but there were also like fucking people in their 30s when it started, or people in their 50s
sure.
when it started. It was a
For
lower
sure.
class movement, and yeah, we dress
Yes.
scruffy. Fuck you. Like I don't even need to
Yeah.
explain why we dress scruffy. We dress scruffy. That's just us. Like fuck off.
Yes.
Like it's rebellion. Like we ain't fucking.
The person who said that is also been known to. I know a couple of young fellas who had a very unwanted attention from this person.
Oh,
They weren't-
interesting.
they
So
weren't
an
children.
accusation from a conservative ends up being a point of admittance again.
Yep. Oh yeah. There's another one. I mean,
Jeez.
there's one of them who said one of them called me a shit lib and a soy boy, and he looks like his gene pool is about the size of a fucking puddle. I mean, there's another one from Scotland who called me a degenerate. I said, if I meet him, I'd love to meet him one day. That'd be hilarious. I'll probably just tap him on the shoulder and say, "Would you like to say that to me face?" But I don't want to start talking big macho talk like that because it's the kind of pathetic fucking crap that they do.
I mean, what's it? Sometimes I can't help it. Like, if I'm getting, like, stared at and laughed at by some cis person in public, my instant response is, are you gonna fucking say that to my face? You got something to say?
Yeah.
Like, I'm very, like, defensive because I'm not gonna be treated like shit. Normally, I keep it to myself when I'm on my own, but if I'm with someone else who's trans, which they're also gonna be getting looked down on, I get doubly defensive. Because then I'm with someone else, and I'm responsible for them feeling like cogent and safe and happy and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not dissimilar from it's an autistic thing as well, I think. But you get that kind of feeling of wanting to stick a bottle across their face or something like that. Not that I'm actually going to do it, but you just feel that.
Like, what's it? It's one of those funny things where like we're more likely to rebel in more direct ways, especially if others are involved. Pretty based.
Yeah.
Fucking.
Yeah.
Like, what's it? It's I don't know, like, it's fucking one of those things. Like, we're more outspoken because we can't really keep our mouth shut.
Sure. Absolutely. Aye. What was I going to say? But anyway, no, I was thinking of actually doing some comedy stuff. I think I mentioned this to you, didn't I?
Yeah.
I want to make another tinfoil hat and do another impersonation of an angry anti-vaxxer. I mean, I shared that on TikTok and I shared it around Facebook, and it had numerous likes and people saying you should do this more often. And because I like doing serious political commentary and then some completely zany Monty Python the Young Ones type of bloody madcap comedy as well. Because there's one thing I can't one stereotype I can't stand. It's humorless communists. Puritanical sense of
Humor is a petty bourgeois deviation.
It's my favorite one. I'm quite proud of that one. Sense of humor is fun, is capitalist degeneracy, and sense of humor is a petty bourgeois deviation.
It's like the meme when someone like made this edit and they were like sex is like revisionist, and then like someone like there's like someone asking Mao going why, and then Mao goes I refuse to explain any further.
I'm just being filthy for the sake of it. Just a bit. If any Pat Socks watching, by the way,
what's it? But fucking the you know the comedy is something that'd be nice to push forward and like.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. I'm just trying to stick, but a very badly stuck on bit of yellow on my chin to sort of do a Yankee Tanky impersonation.
What's it like? Fucking, if you're really committed, you can go the Sharpie route, and then you like have to be Yankee Tanky for a month.
No, never. Oh,
no,
God,
what's
no.
it? I think like pieces of paper with blue tack or sellotape, and like they're like colored yellow.
That would be funny. Aye, Yankee. I mean, Spanky.
Or like get some dead grass that started to turn yellow, and then just tape it to your face.
I might just make a ridiculously bad piece of yellow stuff and just stick it on with a bit of blue tack, and
Have the blue tack kind of obvious as well. You got to like make it as tacky as possible.
I still want to do more about fairy liquid in what it's unknown in the US. Fairy liquid. It's a standard household name of washing up liquid for doing the dishes. But I did a parody of that once with a tinfoil hat saying fairy liquid. They're putting fairy into the washing up liquid. It's making us all gay. It was my Alex Jones
They're putting
impersonation.
chemicals in the washing up liquid. They're turning the freaking frogs gay. What's it? It's so very liquid as well. They need to go back to the old bottles. Can't make rockets anymore. Fucking old fairy liquid bottles. They're like these big tubes, and you could like fucking make your own little rocket out of it if you use the right fucking ingredients.
Oh God, yes. I think that sounds familiar.
They're also great
Yeah.
for water fights because like they hold a lot more liquid than the new bottles do.
Yeah.
It's basically like a super soaker, but for £1.39, and your mum got some fucking washing up liquid for you to do the washing up with. Aye.
Oh, anyway, I'm gonna have to bow out. I think
Skedaddle.
I am. I'm gonna have to disappear and try and retire for a couple of hours before I wake up again in a few hours' time.
Get that 3-hour power nap.
Meh, more like the thing is that every time I try and have a power nap, it ends up turning into a full length bloody. I end up sleeping well.
What's it like? It might be one of them where you have to sort of micro move it, where you have to like move into sleeping in the day, like for several days, just further and further on until eventually you get to sleep at 9 o'clock at night, and then you're like, okay, we're getting close now. We're getting close.
It gets an hour later for each day, so I end up waking up at 5 a.m. and then end up waking up at 7 a.m. and 9
At
a.m.
least like there'll be like 7
It's like-
days where you're like, or like 8 days where you're like sleeping at a normal time, and then he'll be back at it to being up being up at night and up asleep in the morning. I do both. Like I end up sleeping like for the afternoon a lot, but like I'm usually up during the day. I sleep for the afternoon until the night, and then I wake up for the night, and then I'm awake all night. And then I either have a little bit of a sleep in the morning, or I like exist in the morning for a bit and then sleep for like half the day.
That's kind of,
Well, I say half the day. It's about 3 hours. I don't ever really get more than 3 hours sleep. Because fibromyalgia is a cunt. It always feels like I slept for half a day because it'd be dark outside, and I'll go check my phone, and it's like, oh, it's 7, and the last message I sent anyone was at like 3, or 5. Sorry, 3 or 4. It was like 5 until 7:30 last night. Can't remember what I fell asleep doing either. Oh yeah, no, it was actually it might have been about 3 again, because I fell asleep in call with my my found little sister. We were playing Minecraft, but then I decided to lie down and go to sleep.
Fair enough. I think talking of which, I think it might be my time. I'm starting to kind of go like
No, you don't have to apologize for. It's great to have you on here.
I shall love and leave you all, and I shall catch you soon. And red salute in the meantime.
Peace and love and red salute, brother.
It's long
Red salute.
Well, salam.
Talk to you later.
Aye.
Wide awake.
We're now
'Cause-
just the
'cause when
two of us.
Yeah, because when I jumped in, I had barely woken up. And then I got
So you're like
food.
the most awake person here.
Yeah, I napped in the day, I guess. I don't know. I haven't. Just one of those things. It just kind of hit me, and I woke up just in time to check the score.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's it? I mean, we were talking about this yesterday. It's like the fucking Palestinian situation has been like incredibly stressful amongst other issues that are going on in our lives, and it's just taking a massive toll because there's so much. I mean, it's a
Absolutely.
privilege that we get to like engage or not without it. That's why, even though it's been a toll, like, and it's the same for you. You've been like right at it, reading every fucking article you can. We haven't stopped
Right.
engaging with it, but it is fucking definitely stressful. And that's the mindset people need to take. It is stressful. It's gonna be stressful, but we have to like, we can't like ignore it. We can't pull our minds out of the Palestinian issue for
Right.
fucking like days upon days. I wanted to get this done earlier in the week, but some comrades were working, so I set it for now just to get it done so we could have more people here. We lost comrades to the like ether, but I was expecting to be here, but I guess they're too tired or exhausted.
I see.
I wanted them here because they got good things to say, but I also understand because like their work works them like an absolute pig. Like they're assholes.
Right.
something something burn the entire medical industry of America to the ground. Wait, what? But the yeah, like the situation is like intolerably stressful in certain ways, but we got to tolerate it. Like we're not being bombed,
Right.
so like we have a privilege to be able to engage in it in more like fucking like from a distance. We're not engaging in it from like, oh, we're getting bombed or attacked. We've got safety comparatively, so like
Right.
it's why like I don't see any like justification for any argument against protest or strike right now. It's pointless. It's petty and pathetic. Like right now, we have a fucking duty to strike and struggle. Our imperialist fucking masters themselves, they have fucking the power to actually change fucking Israel's point of attack. They are the fucking
Yeah.
people that fund Israel. Israel is a benefactor of these empires,
Yeah.
not the other way around. So we can push these empires to do something if we struggle hard enough. There's a reason
Yeah.
why they're trying to shut down protests, because it will change public opinion. If public opinion changes, well, imperialism fucking they care more about stability than anything else. And if the
Yeah.
people are pushing for a
Henry.
maintenance of stability by a push to disarm Israel, they won't disarm them, but they'll at least fucking put in positions that support Palestine and try and stop the conflict, because they'll be afraid that they'll be revolted against.
One of the more newer developments trying to delay the IEF ground assault until there's a corridor open. But I don't know, at this point, yeah, it's yeah, we had to change. Yeah, it has to be striked, protested, so this is not allowed.
The thing is, there was a corridor open, and the IDF fucking destroyed it.
Yeah.
There was the corridor between North Gaza and Israel, and they just bombed the shit out of it after telling people to evacuate.
Yeah. They were also arresting protesters in Berlin, I guess, towards the end of the day. Hungary's cracking down on protests as
Yeah,
well.
Hungary's made them all illegal.
Yeah, this is Orban's a fascist. And he's been there as long as Netanyahu, as far as I know.
He's been there for a while,
20
yeah.
years.
Right.
Yeah. And yeah, with the influencers, I mean, it was just some of them are trying to walk it back now after like 5 days throwing Palestinians under the bus. They're like trying to walk back some of their vocabulary. Oh, we won't focus on this fake story as much anymore, but Hamas and so some of it's just opportunism for these influencers, because they're pretty bad on every other issue.
Yeah. And it's like it's all the accusations of all the Palestinians are doing this brutal thing and that brutal thing. I have not seen
Yeah.
like really much like brutality from the Palestinian forces. They've attacked people, including civilians. Yeah, they've bombed people and they've shot people. They haven't been like fucking cutting people up en masse or like anything like that. But the Israelis have been bombing people en masse with fucking,
Yeah.
what is worse, fucking IEDs or like fucking what's it? Let me fucking BAE. Like fucking, who's
Right.
really the problem? Fucking man in fucking machine bombing you with BAE systems, or home, or fucking,
Yeah,
Arab man
JRM.
fucking running around with homemade IED. Who's really causing the fucking trauma
Right.
here?
I mean, in some cases, in a lot of cases, these apartheid soldiers, they're shooting people with like a tiny rock, and there's no reason to shoot anybody with a rock to begin with. It's a war crime. But yeah, this is the Palestinians being oppressed, and this is literally a open air prison camp. Now they're destroying the camp. Now they're destroying Gaza and inhumane blockade that's completely illegal as well.
Yeah. And like for the people that are wondering, like, oh, why have they told them to evacuate and then cut them off? It's extermination. They're just trying to make it look like to the
Yeah,
international community that they care about Palestinian people and their trauma.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, it's just genocidal warfare.
Yeah, and it's uh it's Nazi shit. Like everyone would be like, "Oh, you could call it fascist, but calling it Nazi is anti-Semitic and offensive." Fuck off.
Yeah, no, no,
Like
it's
it's
Nazi
what it
shit.
is. It's
Yeah,
Nazi shit. They're
yeah.
literally on an extermination program. There are forms
I
of
mean,
fascism that exist that
yeah,
don't want to exterminate an entire population. I know it might sound kind of rad to people, like, "Whoa, mad, that's crazy," but like it exists. I mean, it's not usually how fascism operates. It's usually quite fucking brutal and genocidal, but it's not actually the what makes fascism fascism. That's just something it picks up from colonialism. Fascism is like a specific form of like socio-economic and political like positions and conditions that are set around certain types of fucking bourgeois ideological forces, and like you know it has a center point and like origination in the petty bourgeoisie and their positions on like capitalism. And we're not talking like the typical petty bourgeois. The typical petty bourgeois is usually
right.
liberal, as Mao rightly says. They're the most liberal class. This is a faction of petty bourgeoisie that are like very centered on being a part of the dominance culture. They want to be bourgeois more than and not
Hmm.
in the business sense. They want to rule the dictatorship. They want to turn the system
Yeah,
of capitalism from a democracy into a dictatorship, and they want to rule it with an iron fist. Social fascism is slightly
yeah,
different, but like we're not getting into that. With fascism, it is very fucking like, and Nazism is just like this. It's very encompassing like that, and it has origins in like middle class intellectual, petty bourgeois intellectuals that were like, they had a heavy investment in the aristocracy, the old aristocracy, or
yeah.
descendancy in the case of modern day, because we, you know, the old aristocracy a bit while back, but we've even seen people like Richard Spencer flaunting about their old aristocratic heritage. And I mean that in the
Yeah,
feudal context, not the modern. Like aristocracy is a more diverse term because it's also a tie into the labor aristocracy today. But we're talking like the old feudal
right.
aristocrats, and those members of the petty bourgeoisie have made a massive uptake in fascism, and they use the crumbling middle class bullshit as a way to try and fucking get like and there are periods where the middle class crumbles. I mean, the bourgeoisie will fucking fund it whenever it suits them. I mean, we saw that in the 50s. Middle class was crumbling through
Right.
the 30s and the fucking 40s, but in the 50s they got privileges, and in ways they got like major privileges during the 30s and the 40s in the UK. Middle class people was that's when the fucking homes the homes started, like where people started owning their own homes en masse in the middle
Right.
class, not the 1950s like everyone will tell you. But yeah, like there are periods where the middle class crumbles, and there are periods where it is fucking, you know, for lack of a better word, financed. But like it's the fascists use this idea of the crumbling middle class as a way to get ferment amongst the middle class, and we saw this with the Nazis in the
Hmm.
20s. They were more focused on building their middle class and upper class presence initially, and then built up their working class
Right.
presence as time went on. Not entirely though. Certain elements like the beer hall putsch was a way of trying to suggest to Germans of any class that like there's a movement
Right.
to do things better and get us out of this rut. It would, you know, its failure was actually quite a massive part of the Nazi success. It gave them this idea of being this oppressed group that was struggling for freedom.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the January 6th, but back then, I mean, there's parallels at least, but like, yeah, I agree there, and
I think January 6th was
yeah,
meant to fail. I think it's an imitation.
maybe. Yeah, it's definitely an imitation, but
I
like,
don't mean just of the
unfortunately,
attempt. I mean like it's imitating the effects the beer hall putsch had on the German population. Because it's showing, it's
right,
like its
right,
failure shows to right wingers that there is a movement of people willing to actually rise up, and it makes the more militant right wingers more willing to be openly militant, as we've seen since it.
exactly, and unfortunately, back then, the kind of, well, I mean, at first they were mad about it, but then they kind of downplayed it. We do see some people do that, so, um, yeah.
Yeah. they downplayed it to make it look like, well, no, we're stable. We're not a threat of being couped or anything. 1932 wants the fucking that statement to be taken back. But or was it 31? It might be 31. But the
Yeah.
what's it? So like talking about this with fascism, we get into Israel. Israel is a fucking fascist country. Has an interest in dominating the region it has made itself the land of. Now, similarly to the way the U.S. fascists, colonists. This was before fascism, but the way the U.S. colonists justified their taking of land, it was through white settlerism, and white settlerism was based on this concept from of well, originally it was like European, but then when the term white got taken over, that became like the core center of it. But regardless, like it was this Anglified settlerism. The way that America originally formed within the English colonies, the 13 colonies, was they were English ethno-states. They had other peoples there that were European, and they were oppressed by the English too. Like, it was an English ethno-state. It became a white ethno-state later, and white isn't really an ethnicity, so white racial state, you could say, instead, like, racialization, because white is not an ethnicity. Like, there's so many different ethnic groups that are called white. Like, an ethnicity is, like it's a tie-in of, like, the people's culture to a language, a region, and, like, you know, the peoples, and there's this integration with it all. Ethnicity is culture. It's not, like, a biological thing. There's no biological component to ethnicity. What's it? But like, yeah, and so like Israel functions on the same basis. It's a white ethno state. There are other peoples there, and they're oppressed. Even the ones that gain benefits by being in the police force. They're usually of like Sephardi or like Ethiopian heritage and stuff. And while they are like nowhere near as oppressed as the Palestinians, they still suffer from racism and they still suffer from discrimination. It's why they all use those police officers in areas where they actually can have that superiority, like in places that are like predominantly brown or like predominantly full of Palestinians, because you've got the 48 to consider as well, like and so those police officers are used as well as a tactic too, because it's hard to go and like, oh well, look, white supremacist domination, because look, they've got black and brown people and they got that from the Americans. That's tactic the American police have been using for a while. Look, we're not racist. We have black police officers that commit to white supremacy. We're all good. But yeah, it's Israel, therefore, with its white supremacist style order and its want for white puritanicalism within its society, will invade Palestine on a mission of extermination, not on a mission of, oh, we just want the land. They don't just want the land. They already have the land, technically speaking, per se. Like, they've boxed them in. They control their airspace. They control their fucking the sea space for the West Bank. They control them. They want to exterminate them. That's why they haven't taken over the land properly yet. They're just trying to beat them into the ground. They've been starving them to try and avoid getting called out for war crimes.
Yeah, that's why they don't let UN third-party observers in and all that. No ICC. And then they've already killed journalists this week. They've already confirmed that the missile strikes killed journalists from here and there, Palestinian ones. I just read a report earlier today that like the IDF had 2 BBC journalists at gunpoint, but I guess they got let go, of course. But they're not gonna do that to the other ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Syrian journalists are fucked. Al Jazeera fucked.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, they basically like blocked our like access to news in many ways, because like a lot of the contacts with Palestinian journalists have been cut off. Like we don't fully know what's going on in Gaza right now, and that's terrifying.
We're relying on like outside reports, probably like UN people with the satellite phones, because the Israelis claim they're gonna cut off the internet tonight. Like, they've already cut off the water, the electricity, the oil, so you can't even use, like, the gasoline for your generator. And, of course, the the fake evacuation slash they're still gonna kill you threat. And then, so on top of that, and all the buildings being destroyed with 2,000 pounds of bombs. What was the thing I was saying? Well, yeah, there's no way to really know if they cut off the last signal for the cell phones there. Um, so we're just relying now on people who escape or whatever, or yeah, it's limited.
Whatever little inkling that can get out while they still have internet. Hamas has made
Yeah,
some public statements on matters, at the least. There's a whole public statement that points out that Hamas is not just for terrorist violence. They've literally said they'll use any means, including armed force. They're not opposed
yeah,
to diplomatic shit. If anything, they've had moments of being a bit too diplomatic with the Zionists, and they still got fucked over.
yeah,
We won't forget about fucking the 90s and the noughties. But the Hamas, like, they've tried everything. They haven't just like been like fuck doing like diplomatic shit. They've tried diplomacy with Israel for a long time now, and Israel just keeps calling them terrorists. Oh yeah, you're calling me a terrorist. Let us know who the terror is.
yeah. And don't get it wrong. I mean, it's well known that the Israelis will kill any opposition to Hamas. There's been evidence of that. So but yeah, it's the Israelis. They're the oppressor, the Nazi apartheid regime here. To look at how people are living right now, 2 million people in Gaza are in the brink of genocide. The West Bank is always being as well attacked,
And like over a
and
million of them are children
yeah, over 1 million are children. It's about the size
that
of
are at
Rhode
risk of
Island.
death right now. There's a lot more people at risk of death, but people at risk of death, there's a statistic that says about 1 million children are going to die in the next few months if nothing's done.
Yeah,
This is
in Egypt
extermination.
still. Yeah, this is extermination. We've already seen the Israeli need. The apartheid politicians. They're just war mongering rabid. I've seen them give speeches where it was like the defense minister of the U.S. and the Israeli one
Mm.
were saying that Hamas is worse than ISIS. What was the implication there? It's genocide. They're saying they're worse than everybody.
It's funny because ISIS
It's
were allies to these fuckers during the during the Libya war.
Yeah, Syria as
Yeah,
well.
so the
Yeah,
Hamas is so awful, but then they can unite with ISIS in Syria they were pseudo allies. They were like hidden allies. They were doing it behind closed
yeah,
doors. I mean, in Libya they were advertising them on the television of the BBC as our allies, as the
yeah,
fucking great rebels that were gonna fight against Gaddafi. And then those rebels all of a sudden disappeared from that region and went over to fucking Syria. But a
yeah,
lot of the Syrian ISIS fucking don't even come from Syria. A lot of them in Libya didn't even come from Libya.
yeah,
So like we were openly allies with these fuckers, and
yeah,
no shits were given by anyone. But then they were then our enemies in Syria, and everyone's like, oh. And then they find out that we're secretly funding them, and like, oh look, they're like allies with them, and it's like I was there, like just like what the fuck. They advertise these people on
yeah,
the telly. Other people, how did no one see? How did no one remember?
yeah,
What is it with the first world and the short-term memory loss shit? Where it's like an issue happens and then it doesn't happen anymore, so no one has to remember it. Like, fuck learning anything from anything that goes on. Just keep going on, chugging about in your first world daydream of capitalist realism, where everything
yeah,
functions properly. Fuck off.
yeah. It's outrageous for sure.
Aye. So yeah, no. What's to be taken from
Yes.
this is the people need to stop listening to fucking all of these like petty bourgeois like white streamers. They've got their head up their ass. Like
Yeah,
fucking what's it? Being lower class, being fucking proletarian, and looking at all of these fucking ass wipes. It's so alienating. You end up feeling like quite a rarity amongst a lot of fucking people here. There's a few petty bourgeois creators that are actually like decent and fucking good people and actually like not fucking assholes. But they're like a rarity of class treacherous folk. Most folk on this fucking platform and on any of these other fucking online platforms, we stuck up fucking wankers that got more privilege than they could fucking hold it to. And they, rather than like combating that privilege or being critical of it, they end up doubling down on it. It's alienating. It fucking feels like it feels like I'm perceived as a creature by these types of people, and it's just like the lack of criticism, the lack of actual like fucking clairvoyant or functional analysis of the situation that's ever going on. No, they just go by what suits them or what meets their wants and needs. They go by that design language, and so the you shouldn't be listening to these fucking dickheads. Like, if they're sounding like some white person and privileged, like who's got loads of money, they're making loads of money off their fucking YouTube channel or their Twitch channel, they're selling you t-shirts and shit. I don't think their positions on Palestine are that salient. Heck, you should be fucking critical of anything I say. I happen to be a white person, and so what I say might not be fully accurate. I might fuck shit up. And I don't mean intentionally. I just mean just on the basis I have a lot of more privilege than an Arab person does in this fucking situation. So my positions could also be fucked. I would suggest for people to not just follow exactly what I say and actually go out and look to people who are like more directly tied in with this experience and know it better. But, you know, like, if you are gonna listen to like fucking some little scrungly white dickhead like me, don't search for the fucking voices that are turning around and trying to condescend to Palestinians and how they should fucking fight their liberation struggle. Like, fuck. Like, there's like such the drastic difference between having a suggestion on things and like trying to take in critical analysis and respecting what like the people have said on these positions from these cultural struggles, like actually taking in consideration what like the PFLP's position are, what Hamas's position are, like how these positions reflect the positions of the Palestinian people, and considering the way these things interact with each other. Instead, they're just feeding you like horsemouth liberal shit about violence being bad. Don't listen to those types of people because they're full of shit. Listen to people who are tied to the experience and people that are respecting those that are tied to the experience. They're the only people you should really be listening to. I mean, well, to be fair, you should fucking hear what the bad people are saying, but not to listen to it and follow it. Like, criticize it. Smash it down. Show people for what it is.
Analyze it.
We're supposed to be communists. So, like, our job is to expose these pacifists, these imperialists in pacifist clothing. They are enemies of peace. They are enemies of the proletariat and our freedom. And so if we're going to do anything, it's not, like, ignore it or just let it pass off. It's the reason why not very in-depth, but I mentions these dickheads, is because they have such a large amount of influence on, like, the middle class, on, like, upper middle class people, like, these influencers. And I don't just mean online influencers. I mean, like, your Cornel Wests and people like that, your politicians. These people, they have like a large scale of influence on the upper middle class and even many of the lower middle class, because everything's centered on this influencer culture. It's a thing that started in the late noughties and sort of kicked off a little more. I mean, it's always been a thing, TV and all this shit like that, but it got really, really big in the 2000s because everyone then got one of these little fuckers, and with these little fuckers, you can watch shit anywhere, like, and it's allowed for this, like, spreading of a lot of these little dickheads, and they have a lot of influence, and we need to break that influence. But also, it's that we need to act in, like, solidarity. Solidarity is not waving a Palestinian flag. Solidarity is struggle. There's always, like, solidarity is always entailed a standing by people, a respecting and a flaunting of these people's culture in a sense of, like, I guess flaunting isn't the right word, like, an exposure of these people being able to flaunt their own culture. And the need for action. I mean, the exposure part is technically a small form of action, like getting people who are actually like tied in with this experience, tied in with this struggle, and elevating their voice and their struggle. That's, I mean, it's not as active as anyone could be, but I would still call that action because you're getting a voice out to people, and that is something. Usually, anything you do in this online space, it's inaction. It's not action. I'm sitting at home, but I would give at least smidgen of credit to anyone who's going to like elevate a voice because it's at least something. But real action is in the streets. It's not in my armchair. It's out there, fucking protesting, rioting, striking. Not well, I've got my Palestinian flag on the wall inside my house, and I pray their souls be right every night. That's not struggle. That's not solidarity. Well, I mean, in some ways it's solidarity, but it's like liberal solidarity. It's like, oh yeah, I have the flag on my wall. It's like, I support trans people. I have a flag on my wall. Like, fuck, would I ever protest for their rights? But I have a flag on my wall. It's that kind of shit, and that shit is bollocks. That's not an ally. That's someone who's like thinks they are a proper ally, but really they're just, they're just someone who wants to fucking flaunt they're pro-trans. They just want to flaunt it. But really, when it comes to actually doing anything, they couldn't give a shit. Fascists could stomp us out, and they couldn't care. And that's the case with a lot of people. You'll see some people that are like claiming that they support Palestine, but you're seeing their colors come out. As soon as it comes to a point where they're fighting back, they're willing to say, well, the Israelis have a right to fucking defend themselves, blah, 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 blah. And that's some justifying genocide inside their little brains.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I was reading somebody else I tweet out. They're saying this. The both sidesism is not innocent. It is the mental gymnastics of pseudo-intellectual moral cowards without the fortitude of character to simply, openly support Zionism without open zeal. And I mean, some of these people out there, they're just saying this pseudo crap where, both sides were violent, gotta denounce this side. And at the end of the day, they are just directing people from not supporting, in this case, the Palestinians, the oppressed. And so we got to be against that kind of crap that's happening out there, for sure.
Yeah. This bossidism is not innocent. It is the mental gymnastics of pseudo-intellectual moral cowards without a fortitude of character to simply openly support Zionism without zeal. In conclusion, the only moral stance for all people of conscience to take is to support the anti-colonial struggle against Israel's settler colonialism in occupied Palestine. This is a litmus test for all human freedom because all oppressed people across humanity can't be free until Palestine is free from the river to the sea.
Yeah.
What's it? It's the quote I condemn both sides, end quote, is the settler colonial version of all lives matter.
Absolutely.
It's bollocks. I mean, all lives matter was actually something that was also colonial, but I know what they mean. But yeah, that's it. So, like, to conclude, what we're really nailing at here is that this isn't just a, like, oh, here's some things for you to know to be updated on Palestine. The main drive of this video is that we need action, not like lay about and around and sitting around or like protesting about other issues right now. Everything should be prioritized towards Palestine right now because they're under genocide. Like, I don't want to see the Palestinian people be wiped out. I would damn well hope anyone watching my fucking content is the same. I understand that we have our struggles, but we've got to find a way to do what we can. Like, it's not all about being on the fucking front line of some aggressive protest. There's also peaceful protests, which can still be a risk, especially for disabled people like myself, but I'm willing to dive in. It doesn't necessarily mean everyone has to be willing to dive in like I do, but be involved, support it, like, help with it. Help with the people that provide water for protesters. Help with the people that fucking provide food for protesters. We get trapped a lot and, like, suffocated, essentially. Like, fucking starved and fucking dehydrated until we give in to the police. That's a common tactic the police use, especially in Germany. So like
Yeah.
any help to get like anything that can help us survive is also a thing that's like fucking grand. Like you've massively helped the protest by providing them water. It's like when it seemed like much, but yeah, you're keeping that protest going for another couple of hours, or maybe even more. It's not all about just like being on the front line. There's so many different things you can do to aid a protest. It's not as simple as yelling and fucking being there as someone who could get beaten by the police. But we saw this with Black Lives Matter. There were like old people in their 80s that were very fucking like they suffered with disabilities due to old age, and they were coming out there. So it's like there's a place amongst the struggle still. Like if you are like afraid that you wouldn't be like accepted as like a reasonable protester because you suffer with disability, no. Anyone's welcome. Like you're welcome to come along, and we'll all do what we can. I mean, I'm one of the people that are also disabled and could do with a bit of protection. But yeah, the protesters will all do what we can to protect those that are like more vulnerable than others. That's
Right.
it's common courtesy in a protest. So there's space for so many different peoples here in this struggle, and we're all gonna struggle together, and it needs to happen. It needs to happen in England. It needs to happen in fucking Scotland, Ireland, Cymru, fucking Spain, France, Germany, Italy, fucking the Americas, etc. Like all these different countries. It needs to happen. East Europe, West Europe, fucking anywhere like where there is a power
Yeah.
play, a powerful position that these countries have where they can change something. Or in the same case of the Arab countries, are like localized countries that have a position where they can actually aid in a liberation movement as a pan-Arab struggle. We all have like our own different responsibilities in like organizing and fighting against the Zionist fucking genocide of the Palestinian people. And that's the main drive of this stream. We need to organize. We need to struggle. Not later, now. Like it needs to go. Israel needs to be destroyed. Protests aren't gonna get that conclusion per se, but it can at least get Israel defanged to some degree, and that's a step in the right direction. Protesting the Israeli nuclear fucking program, protesting Israel's use of fucking chemical weapons, protesting Israel's highly armed society, protesting the fucking wall, protesting the fucking Iron Dome, protesting the fucking settlements, and protesting for a reversal of said settlements. Like, these are small things, and we should still be pushing for a one-state solution of Palestine, but we need some short-term goals as well as our long-term goals, and we should not hide our long-term goals. We should be explicit in our protests that there should only be a Palestinian state, that Israel is an occupier, that they shouldn't be there. But we also need to be prepared for how we're going to ascertain towards an immediate stop of violence right now. Because it needs to, we need, like, and I don't mean a stop of Palestinian violence, I mean a stop of Israeli violence.
Yeah.
Palestinians, even with the Israelis stopping, have a right to fucking rebel as they need be. But Israel has fucking no right in Palestine. Never had any right in Palestine, and never will have any right in Palestine.
Yeah.
Jock for that, Arla. It actually might be Chuck Fade, but that means our time will come. One struggle. Red salute. Stand with Palestine.
Salute.
Their struggle is
Yeah.
absolutely dire at this time of need. And so must our struggle be dire. We must radically organize protests, strikes, riots. We cannot keep sitting on our hands anymore. Red salute, comrades.